I live in Mounds Creek County, about 20 miles southwest of Tulsa. I've worked with multiple communities on data center projects, transmission lines, which my land is impacted by, energy infrastructure projects like multi-thousand acre solar projects that are being proposed in this area of the state and other parts of the state. One of the things that I noticed was there was an email from one of the representatives of the developer, Cloverleaf, from Michael Evans. And as background, I'm a former compliance officer, worked at multiple levels of the government. And when you're reviewing items for fraud, any sort of misappropriate behavior, you always want to take the adage of let their words do the talking. That's actually straight out of the training manual of the FBI. But Mr. Evans said that we work with communities that want and welcome growth, focusing projects in industrial zoned areas. The email goes on to say that they've learned lessons along the way, and they're committed to doing things the right way, such as earning the trust of the community. Now, I don't know what the count is here tonight, but last time in July it was about 287. To me, that doesn't sound like a community has accepted, this developer. And I'm not going to call anyone names. I'm not going to call anyone liars. But let's just say, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of the majority of this room, that this developer has stretched the credibility gap beyond repair. Let their words do the talking. They've said in writing that they will not be in a community if they're not welcome here. And by the looks of the attendance tonight, that's exactly what I see.
Very awesome.
Good evening. So since this started, I went from retired sailor to getting very involved in our civic politics, and some very welcomed and some very not. One of my recent things that I was doing as the board of trustees for Cimarron Electric Cooperative, and during that I had a few different meetings with the CEO. During one of those meetings, I learned that they have an NDA with somebody that doesn't sign NDAs. Mind you, that's an elected board, and he said he doesn't sign NDAs with elected officials. So that was interesting. Also, during another attempt to go see Aaron, I did see some of our officials up there, and I'm hoping that something that they learned there will come out tonight. I didn't see any meeting minutes or anything else, but I guess I could open record request if I needed to find out what was discussed. Anyways, that's all I wanted to talk about. Thanks.
Sarah Gilmore. Gilmore.
Hi. I'm still sort of forming this right now, but I just wanted to say there might be many negative comments tonight, but I want to speak life. I thank God we live in Piedmont, and I want to thank God for all of you. He appointed you in the seat of authority, and I trust his choice. Romans 13:1 says, let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, granted by his permission and sanction, and those which exist have been put in place by God. You have heavy burden, whether you believe in God or not, to take care of his people. And I want to take this opportunity to stand here and acknowledge the weight of the responsibility each of you carries as members of this council. You are entrusted by God and the citizens of Piedmont to ask hard questions, to protect the long-term interests of this community, and to make decisions that could affect families here for generations. I respect the office you hold and the responsibility that comes with it. I also recognize that sitting in these seats means hearing from people on every side. You get the angry, you get the sweet, you get the kind, and even though I'm addressing you, I ask that everybody be kind tonight. Let's just honor God with our attitudes. But I also know that respect that I'm giving also means I'm expecting careful due diligence. It means expecting questions to be answered before irreversible decisions can be made. It means expecting the interests of Piedmont citizens, not pressure, timelines, promises, or outside interests to remain at the center of every decision. I'm not asking anyone here to automatically agree with me on anything that I ask, but I'm asking you that you slow down where answers are still missing and wait for the answers before you cast your vote.
some ways that we could preemptively communicate a little bit better. I was hoping maybe like that would be a little bit healing. It's very hard for me to see this from both sides. So I thought maybe we could do some things, like some changes to the way we can communicate, the way citizens can give input to kind of change some of those feelings. I feel like you guys all have done a really good job communicating with me, and I appreciate that. Maybe I care because of my job and what I do. But I was thinking that maybe we can put our heads together and find some ways to heal the damage this has caused, and so we can do better for the next time. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Rodney Jones.
Rodney Jones, 9163 Richland Road Northwest. You know, when I moved to Piedmont many years ago, about 26, my dad, when he came out to my place, he lived his last 5 years with me. And we'd sit out on the back patio, and this is in the morning, you know, in hot weather. It was 114 degrees in the shade when I built my house. But Dad and I would sit out on the back patio. I've got a little pond down about a half mile away from the house. And you could hear the bullfrogs bullfrogging. You could hear the quail quailing. You could hear all this other stuff. You'd look up, and I can't tell you how many, I mean, it wasn't all that many. But you could look up and you could see some meteorites going by. Now, of course, we've got the windmills that have these wonderful little clearance lights that flash every once in a while. But it's just a beautiful morning when I sat out there this Saturday because it was halfway cool. And I remembered the time with Dad. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't going to speak on the data center this time, but it almost brings tears to my eyes to know that whether it's the noise that is going to be sitting there going thrum, 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 thrum the whole time, or whether it's the noise that we can't hear that adversely affects livestock and their fertility, which that part's been proven as well. And just thinking about it, thinking about the possibility that if I can't move, I'm pretty well stuck. Good news is I'm 72 years old, so I'm gonna die probably before this whole thing gets done. But I just, if you have an opportunity, whoever you are, you need to go out and enjoy what you have, because somebody's getting ready to yank it out from underneath you.
Don Nelson.
Well, Rory already told you about the EDA that Cimarron Electric did sign with our electric co-op. But I do have another question, because I did an open records request, and in that open records request, there was an EDA form from Beltline that was sent to this city, to the community development manager, and that's all I've gotten. When I've asked multiple times now, what else is there with it? And I've been told nothing. I have a hard time believing that the community development director made a decision to not respond, which is what my answer was, that she did not respond. So I would like some clarification, because that's just unacceptable. I did Mr. Heisey about some confusion in the minutes, because again, we just did training, and a 10-minute conversation went down to a simplified motion that at the very last second, the mayor said, going back to planning and zoning, but on the minutes it says that's just nothing's happening. So if we can work on that, especially since we did just do training, make sure that people are clear on what's being said. Also, there was a citizen that posted a comment on Facebook, and it said that she went to the source, she went to the city, and she posted a picture of the project. And I have yet to find out where that picture's from, and I'd like to know where that picture's from. I've written my city council members, everybody, and the mayor included, and nobody's even opened the emails. So I'm kinda giving up on that, so I'm very frustrated. So, if somebody would have talked to me afterwards, I'd like to know where this picture came from, and if it was from the packet that we got last week, or the council got and was taken away. I'd like to know why that information is being put out to only certain people who seem to be in, for the data center, instead of being distributed to everybody, because that is definitely not transparent. Okay, well, that would be, yeah, that'd be great if somebody could answer that question. And then they're not, I know you can I know you guys can ask questions because you have to me before. Okay. And, I am still waiting on open records requests. One of them was a really, really simple thing that I could have received, and it was the changes of the meetings. And I just don't understand why I'm not getting my open records request. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Mary Allred.
Do I need to say my name and address, or, okay. All right, so I'm gonna just talk about, local community type things. I've noticed that new people that have moved in have seen a lot of the back and forth negative, and they're wondering what's going on, and if this is a place they should have moved into. I feel like we need to handle ourselves a little better, me included. I know that I've made it right with some people, and that's all I can do. I also wanted to say, negative businesses, or there's been negative about businesses and whether we should go to them. I think that needs to stop. Like this is a big decision, but that's not fair. Also, this is a big decision for you guys, and I just hope that you put your personal feelings aside and do this for the community and what's best for us, because money is awesome. Like I would like to have all that money, but that's not gonna happen. But I love it here, and I don't want it to change negatively, so that's everything.
Robert Swears.
Good evening, Bob Swearens, 920 Johnson Avenue, here in Piedmont. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and City Manager. These issues have become about more than a data center. It's about how we make responsible decisions as a community when the stakes are high, the boundaries are unclear, and the emotions are strong. These emotions are understandable, especially for the families who live closest to the proposed development. These are not simply dots on the zoning map. They are people's homes, property, investments, and quality of life. But concern alone cannot make public policy. Neither can fear, anger, personal agendas, or assumptions about what might happen. We must separate what we know from what we believe, what we fear, and what we can prove. No single side has a monopoly on the truth. Supporters may see economic opportunity. Opponents may see the risks to their property and quality of life. Both deserve to be heard, and both should be expected to support their arguments with facts. This is not a time for egos, this is not a time for ulterior motives, and it is certainly not a time to make neighbors into enemies. We do not have to agree, but we must be smart enough to recognize that fighting with each other is getting us nowhere. When this decision is over, we will all still live here, we will all still be neighbors, and we will all live with whatever comes next. Let's stop measuring success by who wins the argument. Let's measure it by whether we ask the hard questions, demand the facts, demand transparency, and use every bit of leverage we have while we still have it. Facts over rumor, transparency over secrecy, solutions over division, and community over ego. Thank you.
Nick Archer.
So those state laws do pertain to those things, is it more appropriate to know at a later time?
Even for data center, we'll take you about the data center items, so. Put you in that box. Yes, sir.
John Gilmore? John?
Are you waiting, sir?
John Gilmore?
Where's the data center? Put that data center box, thank you.
Chelsea Bingham?
Good evening. I wanted to take the opportunity tonight to remind the city council members and the mayor that Piedmont Ordinance 09-25-23A, that all governing body members should fully participate in city council meetings, other public forums while demonstrating respect, kindness, consideration, and courtesy to others. This ordinance further stipulates that in the spirit of the Open Meeting Act and in furtherance of the City Council's commitment to conducting government business with as much transparency as possible, electronic devices belonging to a councilor should be turned off or set on airplane mode during City Council meetings. Use of electronic devices by City Council members for talking, texting, email, or otherwise during City Council meetings is except for emergency communications. It is except for emergency communications prohibited. All that we ask is that you show us the same respect that we are expected to show to you. We spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours to research these topics because they impact our everyday lives, they impact our future, the future of our kids and our grandkids. And like many Americans, a lot of our largest investments are our homes. So of course we're gonna have a lot invested in all of these topics. So I ask that you follow your own rules and give us the respect that we deserve. Thank you.
Scott Murrow? Do we need to go one more time? So,
Yeah, just have a little left.
so we are out of 20 minutes. So I'm asking the council if somebody would make a motion to extend the time for this last topic.
Make a motion to extend for the last comment. Second. Second.
Rob?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Byron?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Mr. Murrow?
Appreciate that. I just want to start by saying that I know you guys have a tough job. You guys you're never going to make everybody happy. And I know there's a lot of people who would never want to sit in your seats. So thank you for giving your time and effort to the city. I was going to talk my 3 minutes right now because I can't take more than 3 minutes on item A about the threat that Cloverleaf gave to our city, but I will just leave it at this. Kingfisher County appears to be looking into this. At their meeting today, the water issue was tabled, and there was discussion about possible moratorium and about a planning and zoning opportunity that could potentially be placed on the next week's agenda. I just want to let you know. Thank you.
Alrighty, before we move into item 8, scheduled business, I'd like to, without objection, I'd like to leave the council meeting and convene to the PMA meeting on page 205. Without objection, I'd like to take the roll call from the council meeting and use it for the PMA. Now, do you want to pull anything on consent?
Yes, sir. No.
Ron?
No.
Rob?
No.
Jonathan?
Item D. D is in dog.
And Byron?
No.
Can I get a motion to approve A, B, and C on the consent agenda?
move we approve it. Items A, B, and C on the consent agenda.
Second.
John?
Aye.
Byron?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Heisey, item D.
Yeah, these are not equal quotes. I know this was voted on at the last meeting, asking you to reject Triple J's bid, but my motion is gonna be to reject all of these bids, because it's obvious that they're not all bidding this, they're not all quoting the same things, because their quotes here don't even have the same items on them, they don't even have the same quantities. And if they were given a standard sheet with the quantities and the items, they would all have the same quantities and items on the proposal that they gave the city. And I'm going to ask that you not ask me any more questions, or else it's not going to be pretty. So, I move to reject all bids for the Morgan Road Bridge repair.
Second. Matt?
No.
Jonathan?
Aye.
Byron?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a second motion on that item. Can you do that? Can I make a second motion on that item? I move that these items, this repair be put out for quotes again, using a standard quote sheet, and that the mayor can call a special meeting if we need to approve the most qualified quote.
Second.
Yeah, so, I know you and I talked about this a little bit, this is what I'm gonna talk about. No, I thought it's noticed as rejection only.
Okay.
And so, however, since it's under the bid cap, we don't have to have authorization, the city manager can just
Okay.
get those bids and bring them back to you.
Alright.
But I'm quite confident that he will make sure the bid sheets are the same after hearing it.
Thank you.
So we don't need to vote. I don't have any citizen comments for the PMA. Those are all covered. We have no scheduled business for the PMA. So without objection, I'd like to leave the PMA and reconvene to the city council. Page 2. Item 8A, discussion, consideration, and possible action on rezoning application submitted by Aaron Bilyeu. This is the planned unit development. You guys would come up and give us your presentation. It's gonna be back there. Hey, will you, Mr. Corman, yeah, will you hit that last switch for us? Turn the back one on. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us early in the evening. Looking forward to be able to get through the presentation here. I know this is the first time you'll be seeing a lot of this, unless you read the presentation that we started on last time. Before we get started, I do want to address an item, and that is relative to the press release that we put out earlier this week. The intent of that press release was to continue to be as proactive and as communicative and as transparent as we can be about our intentions for the project. We did put additional
additional land under contract. It is in Kingfisher County, that could potentially be, a data center project, if this group, elects not to move forward with our proposed PUD. So again, the intent there was to be as transparent as possible. Would have been easy for us not to do that, but again, just wanted to keep everyone informed as the project continues to move forward. Tonight's attendees, a little bit different than last time. We had some people not able to make it. So these are the people who are here tonight representing Cloverleaf. We got myself as the Chief Development Officer, Jonathan Abebe, our Chief Technical Officer, and then Brent Kissling, who's a consultant with Next2 Consulting, who is doing some economic development work on our behalf. Then also with us, we have David Caparelli, who's an advisor, has done a lot of natural gas work to answer any questions you might have about that component of the project. And then two of the development managers that work with us, Travis Armistead and Corinne Patel, are here as well, and may be called up to answer specific questions if you have them. Here's the agenda. For anyone looking for the updated presentation, it's mostly the same as last time. However, there are some updates, particularly in the maps, to include the additional parcel. That QR code will work to get you a copy of the presentation. The things we're going to talk about tonight, we'll talk about Cloverleaf and very responsible data center development and the commitments that we have made and will continue to make for the project. We'll talk about the project Open Sky and the benefits potentially to the city of Piedmont. And we'll also be looking to address a lot of key data center concerns and opportunities, because there is a lot of misinformation out there that is being consistently quoted. So, oh, not a problem. Yes, and that also directs you to the Project Open Sky website. All right, anybody still need the QR code? Raise your hand if so. I assume that's what that meant. All right, good. Okay, I will not drain this slide. This is sort of a broader perspective on the overall leadership of Cloverleaf. We're about a 2.5-year-old company at this point. We were founded to develop powered land sites for large energy users. Most of us come out of the data center industry. I think I've counted, we now have 8 or 9 ex-Microsoft people, and just added our 4th ex-Meta person. We've come out of some of the largest companies in the world. You can see there on the bottom right, large, very trusted companies, both on the data center side, as well as on the renewable energy side, engineering, things of that nature. Plus or minus 15 years in power and development in terms of the experience with our people. Lean Agile team, and the 29, I believe, is actually 31 now, as I think we had 2 people start this week. So continuing to grow, but still a fairly small, fairly nimble company. So just kind of setting the stage, excuse me, overall. The PUD that you are reviewing today, it includes 633 acres, which includes, let me get the, my pointer's working. I don't think it has enough range. So the PUD includes the area in the light green, sort of in the center of the map on the right. And we've identified 3 potential expansion areas to the northwest, to the southeast, and as most recently announced, 337 acres in Kingfisher County, directly on the north side of the project. The way our company works is we assemble the land options. We then work with folks like yourselves to put planning permissions in place. We also work with the utilities to get the energy contracts, there we go, that one works. To get the energy contracts in place. We then work with an end user who comes in and will design and build their own facility. So the people we work with, examples are listed there on the left. The Port Washington project was mentioned. That was sold to Vantage Data Centers, who's now building a data center for OpenAI. Will be the ultimate user there. We've also sold projects in Georgia to Google. And so we continue to work with these large end users who then come in, design and construct the facilities, and ultimately become part of your community. In terms of the entitlement flexibility, again, it's our intention to work with the City of Piedmont. We believe this would be a good fit for your community. But if that's not something that this group ultimately elects to do, we will likely be continuing to proceed with a potential project on the 337 acres in Kingfisher. Be working on those probably simultaneously. We'll talk about kind of the process in a little bit and where we are, and some of the additional steps in the process where the project would come back and need additional approvals from this body to move forward. In terms of the overall economics, right now we are looking at around a 600 megawatt facility. We would like to increase the amount of power to the facility to around 1.4 gigawatts. So the tax revenues you're seeing on the energy side are based on around the 594 megawatts. That would be roughly $9 million a year to the City of Piedmont. And then in terms of property taxes, we're projecting $13 million to the city based on a $1 billion investment. And so those are fairly conservative, quite honestly. A Meta project, one of my former employers that just got announced in Canada that would be similar to this. What they have committed is $13 billion in investment, 3,000 peak jobs, 300 operational jobs, and about 60 million in water and road infrastructure that they would be paying for. You would also then see, if we get to a 1 gigawatt campus, you know, that number from the 600 megawatts continue to go up from the sale of electricity as well. So this is a significant opportunity for the community. Realize I need my clicker. Okay. So the Cloverleaf Standard, this is something that we do everywhere. Our company is built on transparency, meaningful local benefits, and responsible development. So we do have no NDAs with any public officials. We host community open houses, which we did here in the community, and have websites with all of the information on there. We got the link to the QR code just a minute ago. We do provide local, meaningful benefits. We work with the community to understand what the community's needs are. We will work to administer those programs, and we will be making charitable contributions based on the community's priorities. The other thing that we do and pride ourselves on is responsible development, very much about protecting natural resources such as water. We'll talk about that. Mitigating the negative impacts on roads, water, sound, and views. We've got slides to discuss all of those things. And then the other thing that we do is pay our own way. No costs are passed on to the ratepayers on the water, on the electricity, on the utility side, or on the roads. The data centers are definitely here to pay their own way. So what is a data center? So data center is essentially a large industrial building filled with lots of computers and servers. The things that come out of a data center, all of their smart searches and recommendations that you're seeing coming through Google or whatever your search engine of choice are, all of the traffic and navigation on your phones, Google Maps, again, comes through optimization. Things like precision agriculture come out of technology and data centers. All of the shopping and delivering, everything you're doing on Amazon and all your online shopping runs through data centers. Every credit card transaction, the fraud and security that comes with that. And then one very near and dear to me is just the healthcare and the early diagnosis with all of the technology that's out there. The lower left is just a diagram kind of showing, and you'll see all of these elements when we go through the site plan in more detail. So you've got the data center campus buildings, you've got some perimeter roads to be able to service those. You've got a secured perimeter and entry, you've got office components, and And then ultimately you have a substation to serve the building that comes on site. Okay, what does a data center look like? Lots of questions out there. What can they look like? This is a data center that's not too far from my home in Phoenix. This is a slightly smaller but very dense data center. It's 86 acres, 250-ish megawatts. What you see on the left is really what I would expect a data center on this site would look like. It's a logistics building, very logistics-looking building, with an office component and parking around the front. Some equipment potentially on the roof. And then in the plan view on the right, you can see it's very near homes in this case. But all of this is the mechanical equipment that is tucked in behind to really minimize sound, minimize visual impacts and things like that. This is a more dense data center than what we're proposing. Again, this is 86 acres. We're looking at several hundred acres to accomplish a little bit more data center. So why build in the city of Piedmont? It's more than about building a data center. It's really about building a community. There has been a significant amount of positive press. I believe some of that may have been forwarded to you about some communities that are seeing huge benefits from data centers. The Microsoft data center in Quincy, Washington, over the last several years has driven the poverty rate down from 29 to 4%. The article from that project is called A Brand New Everything, because that community has, from the revenue driven by the data center, been able to completely rebuild itself. You have put in a very responsible development ordinance that we're willing to work with. There's a few changes that we would like to see. But you were proactive. You put in a comprehensive ordinance that allows this project to be able to move forward. There is some infrastructure that y'all need that we would love to participate in the cost of. I know there's challenges with the water, and some of the roads are two things that we would be very interested in working with you to fund that. And then really the long-term revenue generation allows you to create a long-term budget to be able to maintain and grow and have a vision for your community. And again, the data center wants to be part of that. In terms of the industry standard, the data center will come in and earn the trust and support of the community. Once we get through this stage of things and you start to see the benefits. And then there will be significant investments in the local communities. And the large companies that I mentioned that would be the ultimate users here, those are some of the largest, most trusted companies in the world. And they end up investing a tremendous amount into the communities where they operate. So, addressing water, or addressing concerns. I am not going to drain this slide because we have backup for every one of these. The siting, proximity to Matheson substation, critical. Water use will cap at 75,000 gallons a day per an agreement with the city that you will have regulation over. We will fund the water and wastewater. We will fund the road upgrades. You have need for your transportation and mobility. Again, the data center is willing to participate in that, fund ours, and also make other additional upgrades. We will be the quietest place in Piedmont, according to your zoning code. We're required to be that. We will do that. We can talk about infrasound, which is a non-issue. We will pay for the fire services and make sure that the services required by our facility are paid for by us, the material, the equipment, the training, all of those things. Again, benefits back to the community. We talked a bit about what data centers look like. Jonathan will come up and talk about the power generation and ratepayers. Got some information for you on property values. Data centers actually increase property values instead of the contrary theory that they drive them down. The economic impact we've hit. We'll talk about community benefits. Cloverleaf will step up to the table and make a $10 million commitment on the front end to help bridge to when the property taxes and the energy revenue starts to come in. And then Oklahoma House Bill 2992, protecting the ratepayers. So, the proposed location. We've talked about this. The reason we chose this location is really the proximity to the Mathewson substation. It's one of the strongest points on the grid. So connecting there makes a whole lot of sense for the project, as well as not having to build any transmission lines. So we can hook directly into that substation, be right across the street, and not have to string several miles of transmission to other locations within the city if we went somewhere else. So in terms of going somewhere else, there's been questions asked about the existing industrial area. And so I skipped over the transmission one to get to this. If we did that, number one, we would have to build 5 miles of transmission lines at 150 feet wide, which would impact numerous properties along the way, homes, businesses, other things. In terms of the land use compatibility, this is compatible with what had been proposed. I understand that that has not been ratified at this point. And then also the residential proximity. We're around 15 to 20 properties within a mile of this proposed data center location. And moving it down to the proposed industrial area, that number would jump to between 300 and 325. So what this really means is this project in this location is actually minimally impactful compared to many others, and particularly the industrial area that had been proposed previously. Okay, the PUD. You have a what I would call a fair and strict PUD. There are some things in there that we're proposing that would be slightly different than what you originally asked for. We are proposing an overall decibel limit of 60 decibels, and I'll get to why we feel that's appropriate in a few minutes. By the way, just for orient you to the slide here, everything in black is what you've asked for, and we're saying, yeah, that's good. Anything in green, we're proposing a modification to, and I apologize if anyone's colorblind and can't see that. Can you see the difference?
I can see it.
Okay, all right. I just thought of that. Put down the list to make sure we don't do it again. And then down on the design and visuals, we don't believe that screening rooftop equipment and ground-mounted equipment is necessary because of the berming and the landscaping on the perimeter. You'll never see past the perimeter. So screening things that can't be seen doesn't seem to make sense to us. Then on the second page, just taking out the requirement for a special use permit, because what that means is another step in the process and coming back here rather than just saying, yes, everything that we've agreed to from a layout perspective works. We would request a 65-foot building height to allow 2-story buildings. Allowing 2-story buildings brings a smaller footprint and brings those buildings into the center of the site and also allows for better sound attenuation. I see Mr. Myers has a confused look on his face, so I'm going to try and be proactive. A single-story data center is about 30 to 32 feet tall, and so if you go 2-story, it needs to be 60 to 65 feet. Oh, does it say 70? Oh, for in?
We've asked for a modification to 75 feet height. The additional.
Typo on the slide.
Yeah.
Thank you. Also, the 12-foot berms or walls, we've requested to go down to a 6-foot berm. The requirement is for 3 rows of coniferous trees all the way around, plus some additional trees and plantings. So a 6-foot berm that's as tall as me, even I can't see over, plus 3 rows of trees on top feels like it's sufficient. There's also a sustainability aspect to it because of the tens of millions of yards of dirt that would have to be moved to get to a 12-foot wide, 12-foot tall berm. 12-foot tall berm, just for reference, at a 4-to-1 slope on both sides, plus a 12-foot on top of it. Gets to be a 108-foot wide berm. Imagine that running a couple miles around and how much dirt you have to move. So we feel like 6 is more than sufficient. And then we would request you take out the parking spaces. That's more of a thing we see with retail and office buildings and things to make sure people have enough parking. The data centers will put in the appropriate amount of parking for their employees because it's really only their employees on site. So in terms of what we're requesting, in terms of variations, there really isn't a heck of a lot here, given the breadth of your zoning requirements already. So let's talk process for a minute. We are really in kind of step 2 here. So step 1 is the site selection and due diligence, which we've been at for about that amount of time. Looking for land, sourcing land, obviously continuing to source land as we just signed some up recently. Phase 2 is the zoning approval. Determines the land use for the property. It does not authorize construction, right? We can't go out there and start moving dirt if y'all say, yes, this is good. So this is step 2 that we're in. The next step would be for us to identify the end users, get the end user here, and they would start to take over the project. And ultimately, where this group has the ultimate authority is in a development agreement. Because in that development agreement, that's where you're going to spell out, here's exactly what the data center is going to do. Here's the exact dollars that are going to be allocated for the fire department. Here's the exact conditions during construction that we're going to agree to, things like haul routes and whatnot. So this group will continue to have authority over the data center project through the development agreement. Once that's done, we will be working through the pre-construction and the permitting. So getting the stormwater management plan approved, the road improvements done, the lighting plan, noise study, building permits, that'll all be 4 to 6 months, and then we'll get into construction. So construction on a project like this will be a cloud data center likely. Cloud data centers, they want to build very quickly and get all the construction done and be done and out, okay? So what that means is a shortened duration period relative to the historical cloud data centers that have been built for a long time, okay? So the plan there, try to be done in 18 to 30 months. We should put 36 on here to give a little cushion and padding. And then after that is just the post occupancy, the ongoing third-party compliance for water, for sound, for lighting, all of those things. So the bottom line here is this is a first step and not a final approval for a project like this. This is to allow the project to continue to be able to move forward. So here is the more detailed plan. This one's been shown a couple of times here. There we go. Now my pointer's working. So the PUD that we got is sort of this tetra-shaped piece. And what we're showing is data centers tend to have 2 entries, a front entry and a back entry. So all of the traffic will be managed, and the security we're showing kind of here at the northeast corner. You notice there's a security gate. They call it a rejection loop in case somebody gets there by accident and can drive out before getting into the secured perimeter. The secured perimeter would encompass all of the buildings that you see here. We're currently showing 6 buildings. And then at the north there, sort of an office and administrative, here's the office and administrative building. And then also a warehouse for spare parts, things like that that's on site. And then we're also showing the substation that would be connected in via the overhead power lines. Sorry about that, Mayor, if I hit you with that. The overhead power lines. And then on the southwest portion of the site, we have, we're projecting to put in a natural gas peaker plant. So that plant will not run all the time. That plant will only run part of the time during the cold of the winter and the heat of the summer when there's peak electrical loads. the grid doesn't have enough power to be able to cover that, the utility will kick that on to cover the peak. In terms of the undisturbed sight lines, you can see we've got a rendering. And so what this is basically if you took and you cut straight through the entire site, what this is showing is from section A, which is from the top, looking down this way, all the way across the site, that someone's standing over here on this side. We have the 6-foot berm, we have the 3 rows of triple planted trees, as well as native understory vegetation so that you can't see through the bottom. And the sight line all the way across the site, even with a 2-story building, you won't be able to see those buildings. So we have a commitment that as you drive around the site, this is not going to be an eyesore because you simply cannot see it. Your rules are all listed here. The public, we've talked about the triple rows of evergreens. The public frontage has native pollinator-friendly species trees, 100-foot landscape strip, 6-foot canopy tree every 30 linear feet, shrubs. Again, will be prepared by a registered landscape architect here in the state of Oklahoma.
Can I ask a question on this slide?
Yes, sir. You can ask a question whenever you like. Just stop me.
Well, if that section A is actually, can you show me where Waterloo Road is over there at 0 on the left?
Corinne, you can help me with that one?
Right here. And yeah, this arrow is slightly, it should be right about here. That shows the water in the office. It's trying to get the one in the wrong direction.
Okay. Yeah, because, initially I was looking at section A is running through a building and not through the detention pond.
Yeah.
That's shown.
I believe Travis is right. The actual arrow needs to be just to the right, because then you could see where you would see the detention pond, you would see the building, and then you would see ultimately the 2-story data center to the far right.
Well, and the office, okay, so your office building's at 35 foot?
That's the office building right there.
Okay.
Yeah, so the sight line goes across the water to the office.
Yeah, so you're at the road, the berm, the detention pond, the office building is there, and then the data center's back here with the parking lot.
So the
Yes.
section line needs.
Section line needs to be moved and flipped to turn to the right. So
Thank you. All right.
sometimes you look at these PowerPoints for so long, you find the smallest little things. But yes, you are correct. I appreciate you pointing that out.
Can you clarify the perspective?
All right, ready to move? Okay. In terms of water use, I know this has been a consistent topic and concern here in the community with some of the things that have gone on. We are requesting 75,000 gallons of water per day. That is a maximum amount. That would be on a contract with the city, and that is literally all we could withdraw. The water use, the heaviest use is at the beginning of the project. We are committing to a closed loop system. So what a closed loop system is a loop, kind of like a car radiator, that circulates into the building. Outdoor mechanical equipment, whether that be dry coolers or air-cooled chillers, cool the water and circulate it into the building. It goes to the chips, and the servers are then cooled with heat exchangers. Hot water comes out and gets circulated back, and that loop is just a continuous loop to cool the data centers. And so after the initial fill, the only water that gets used in the data center on an ongoing basis is for bathrooms and break rooms and showers. Most of the data centers have now gone to what's called xeriscaping, which is no water for landscaping. They'll just use indigenous plants so that they don't have to use the water even for the landscaping. So after the building's up and running, it gets down to, you know, 10 or 20,000 gallons, to be able to operate the facility. Again, the 75,000 is to really, build the initial system. Estimates are anywhere between 5,000 and 8,000 gallons per megawatt to fill that initial system. Yes, sir.
You ever planted a tree in Oklahoma?
Well, that's why they try to go to the xeriscaping, but that's why we have a local certified landscape architect who may tell us we're crazy for needing to do that. Now, with all of the trees around the perimeter, we may need that water for watering the trees that are required. Okay. And again, the data center will pay for the infrastructure that needs to be put in to support the project. We understand that there is concerns about the existing water system. We've heard anecdotes about lower pressure near the site and on this end of the system. We're willing to pay for a water tower if that's what's needed, the infrastructure to get it out there, and again, that's the sort of thing that benefits the entire community by allowing everyone to have better water pressure in and around and near the, not in the site, but the adjacent neighbors to have better water pressure due to the infrastructure upgrades paid for by the data center. Yes, sir.
Recently, I was given some information about an atmospheric water system for closed loop data centers, where these giant dehumidifiers were put in place that could produce up to 1.5 million gallons of water per year by pulling out of the atmosphere. Have y'all ever looked at that? Would you consider that?
I looked at that at Microsoft. That is, if you could get the volume to work, that would be something that you could potentially do. It's a function of the humidity of the area, how the system works, how often you need it, things like that. But the data center prefers to be hooked to the municipal system because that's the most reliable system. Not to say, if you ask us to look at it, we would certainly look at it, but the preference is to be connected to the municipal system.
Thank you.
Yes?
Will you commit in writing not to drill any water wells?
If we get connected to the system, absolutely.
Will you commit in writing not to drill any water wells?
We will commit to not drilling any wells on this site?
Yes, sir. In
Yes.
writing, to put that in writing?
As long as you'll serve the system. We have to have water for the data center.
Understood. So, will you commit in writing not to drill wells?
I will commit in writing to not drill wells if the city will commit to 75,000 gallon per day limit. Absolutely.
Hey, gallery, this is their time to present to the council, so there will be a time for public hearing in a minute, if you signed up for that. So I really do appreciate you guys so far, for letting us get through this and hearing. If you could kind of keep the noise down, I appreciate it. I have a question about, the Quincy, Washington plant, because they are using I'll just talk loud because this is a lot of static.
Just because where it's at, there's something else.
Yeah, okay. So in Quincy, they're getting about 378,000 gallons per day, recycling some water. And one thing I couldn't figure out, I know that it's kind of a mineral rich water, which we do have some of that, with the production of salt water and stuff from the oil and gas business. Have you looked into recycling, treatment, water options with what we have excess here?
Well, there is no recycling of the water because it literally stays in the system perpetually.
My point on the recycling is using another water source other than potable water to utilize, like they're using in Quincy. They have a filtration treatment system where they are taking mineral-rich water, treating it through multiple different, methods to get to the point to where they can use it. I just didn't know if you looked into that.
We have not looked into that specifically, but certainly could look into it. Just need to meet the water quality standards for the initial fill, because that is a
stainless steel vacuum filled system that you want, you know, really pure, clean water going in, so that you don't get any corrosion or anything long term. So yes, we would look at it is the short answer.
Another question. What water would you use for the initial fill of the cooling system?
That's why we need the 75,000 gallons per day to be able to fill that system initially. The data center requires between 5,000 and 8,000 gallons per megawatt to fill. And so after that initial fill and the facility's up and operating, you're only gonna use about as much water as an office building for the equivalent number of employees, because it's just bathrooms and break rooms, and again, if there's a you know, workout facility, there'd be showers, but that's really the only water that gets used.
It's about 4 million gallons.
Sounds about right.
8,000 times 500 is 4 million, if I'm doing the math right.
Yep.
How long would it take to fill that? I mean, how long would it take to fill up a cooling system?
Well, keep going on your math. 4 million divided by 75,000.
Couple months probably.
Couple months, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it won't all be filled at once. It's not one single loop. There's multiple systems, and as the zones got done, it would be filled. Again, that can actually be done if it's a concern on the volume side. It could be done at night, so you know when other people aren't needing allocations of water. So those are the kind of things that the construction companies will work with you on.
We have very hard water here. Do you treat the water before?
It would be treated to the appropriate standard
So it would be like
before
some kind of
injected in.
reverse osmosis, or what do you call it? You boil it off.
It would likely be
Some kind of distillation process or something?
my guess, without knowing your water quality. So I own the water team at Meta and Microsoft, so I've dealt with a few water agreements. My guess is they would put in a mobile RO system for the initial fill for that couple of months when the system's being filled, and then take it off site, because you wouldn't need that quality after the initial fill.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty hard water. I mean, I know you said stainless steel, but it's really hard.
All of those things are what comes after this, right? There's tens of millions of dollars of engineering and architecture and design and all of that to make sure all of those details get worked out for this specific location. Ready to move on? Okay, I think we can cover this or pretty much skip it, because I think we actually, through your questions, answered this. Again, we are willing to pay our freight on the water side and work with you in a way that helps overall support your long-term comprehensive plan for infrastructure and wastewater here.
I have a question about wastewater.
Okay.
Besides the bathrooms, in the facility, what other wastewater discharges do you have?
0.
So what happens to the water inside the cooling system? You ever have to change it out ever? It lasts forever?
One of my very good friends runs all engineering for one of the companies up there. He assures me you never have to take it out of the system. If you eventually decommission the entire building and take the entire building down, then you would do it, and you would truck it out and dispose of it properly.
So would you commit in writing to never discharge any of that water if you were connected to the city sewer? Would you commit in writing to never discharge cooling fluids into our sanitary sewer?
Yes. And again, I want to be super transparent. It's not just water.
Yeah, you mix a lot of other chemicals in there for corrosion and other things.
The only other thing that went into a similar project that was being described to me is some propylene glycol, which is an approved food additive according to the FDA, so it's not a toxic chemical. That's the only other thing that goes in, and the reason that goes in is to prevent the fluid from freezing. And so that is completely connected or completely disconnected from the municipal system, and that would have to be taken off-site. And that's the kind of thing that we would put into a development agreement to ensure, and again, the building plans and everything would ensure that that would not go into your municipal system, would not go into any adjacent aquifers, anything like that would be dispose of properly?
These closed loop systems like you're proposing here, the one that would be used in this building, how long has that technology been being used in hyperscale data centers like this? How many years would you say?
The first ones are just coming online right now.
So would you say like 2025, 2026?
I would say, honestly, 2025, there's probably been some, now you put hyperscale in there. The first one I know about is actually in Atlanta. It's up and operational. That's in a single building of about 348 megawatts, which is a very, very large data center. The reason people have gone to these closed loop systems, first of all, there's the public perception, right? And the challenges with water and the droughts and things. It's just the right thing to do to move away from water. The reality is, you can't cool the new technology using water anymore. So the way and this is going to sound confusing, but stick with me for a minute, a bit of engineering. The way we have historically cooled data centers is like swamp coolers. And that's where you get the water evaporation. You basically take potable water, because people are going to breathe the air, potable water, turn it into a mist, blow air across it, you get cool air. You dump it into a big space, and the servers then suck in cool air, blow out hot air in the back, and there's a chimney on the back, and it exhausts the hot air, okay? That's where you got water consumption. And people who say data centers consume millions of gallons per day, they're right based on how things used to be done. I personally have sourced lots of water, even in places like Phoenix, for data centers to cool those old type of data centers. The new data centers, the chips run so hot that you can't cool it just by blowing the cool, humidified air across it. So the technology has evolved to the point, because the first rule of thermodynamics, you can push 4 times as much heat into water as you can into air. And so these closed loop systems, and using the water, not evaporating the water, but using the water as a heat exchange method is more efficient. And so that's really why the industry has gone to these closed loop systems, is the necessity of the technology out there and the requirements to reject much more heat than we historically have had to do.
So you commit in writing to not use evaporative cooling?
Yes.
Okay. So it would be a dry cooling system. The ultimate rejection of the heat into the atmosphere is through fans?
Correct.
Okay. You said this system's only been around since maybe 2025, and you said you had a friend who said that the coolant would never need to be changed out. I mean, it's been around a year or two, and we're making lifetime rejections of a system. I mean, that's.
So if we go back to your question, you asked specifically about closed loop systems and hyperscale data centers.
Right.
Hyperscale data centers have only been around a year or two.
Yeah.
These types of systems have been used in smaller data centers and all kinds of industrial applications for years and years.
But
So
not at this scale, right?
No, this is scaling it up for sure. These are the largest infrastructure projects ever built.
What would you say the scale factor is on that?
Well, the one facility in Atlanta was built by a company called QTS, and I believe that one is 348 megawatts, and that is 348 megawatts. And I know we had a little bit of this conversation last time, so I don't want to rehash or confuse.
I wasn't here last time, so
Oh,
sorry.
okay. So when we talk about power, there's 2 kinds of power, or ways we talk about power. One is utility power. That is the amount of power that comes from the utility through the substation onto the data center site. And when I talk about the size of buildings being 348 megawatts, we call that IT, basically how many servers you can plug in. So if you want to know, there's a conversion there, about 1.4 in terms of what a data center load is versus the utility load. So because you need to run those fans. So that's called the PUE. So as a point of order, that 350 megawatt data center at a 1.4 PUE is about 425 megawatts coming from utility. We're currently sitting at 600. So that one building is about 60% as big as 66% of what we're proposing, of what we have secured for power today.
Sure. circling back to my original question,
And by the way,
scale
they are
factor.
building another building on that campus.
The scale factor of the systems you said have been around for a while, and now they're being scaled up in size for hyperscale. What's the scale factor from the system? How small? How large are they? How much larger are they than the systems that were previously used in other applications?
I would be hard pressed to give you an accurate answer on that.
Would any of your staff be able to answer that question?
No.
Yeah, 'cause you don't know. It could be 10, could be 50. We really don't know.
It certainly wouldn't be 50.
And then, but we're making lifetime projections on something that we don't know what the scale factor is.
We're scaling up tried and true mechanical systems. Okay. In terms of transportation mobility, again, just looking at your comprehensive plan, your master plan, this is an opportunity to significantly increase the quality of your roads, the quality of the infrastructure through the additional tax revenue. And I don't think I'll say too much more about that. I think that one's pretty evident. This is an interesting topic as well. We call this the quietest place in Piedmont. The reason being, your requested limitation is 60 decibels during the day and 50 decibels at night. Again, we've requested just a straight 60 decibels. Once the data center starts running, it doesn't get louder at night or quieter at night. It is consistent. But on the left is your existing noise ordinance. Every single property category in Piedmont is allowed to be louder than the data center. So you can consistently run 70 decibels in a public park, and we are committing to running significantly less than that, 60 decibels at the data center. Other industrial areas are up to 80 decibels, and so again, we are committing to be the quietest place in Piedmont by statute. On the right, just as to give you a sense for things, we did a sound study, took 4 measurements, and already out on that site, one of the locations was right at that 60 decibels. We see 59.9. 2 others are above the requested nighttime limit, and then the other one is right at that nighttime limit. So this project would not be contributing significant sound to the area. In one case, essentially nothing, and the others, minimal decibels.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
As the crow flies, how far away would I have to be standing to not hear it? Decent weather, which we don't have a lot of.
Well,
Is that a fair question?
sound is hard. I'm not going to pretend sound isn't. As the crow flies, you could stand 3 feet from point NM-01 and not hear it because the noise there is already that loud.
Well, I have some questions.
Yeah.
You say it's that loud. That's the equalize. That's an average of multiple readings over half an hour or so.
Yes. So sometimes louder, sometimes quieter.
And that's between like your readings. There's 4 readings you took were between 8 and 11 a.m.
Yes.
Advisory day too.
Yeah, during a wind advisory.
Yep.
Which I have a question is how are those noise meters shielded from wind so high winds don't distort the readings that they take?
I would have to get a sound engineer, but they produce the results based on their technologies, and this is all they do is produce these readings.
But it was not. I mean, it wasn't. From what I read it. I mean, there's no standard test method that they use. They just put these out here for a certain length of time, took the recordings, and gave us the.
Yeah, there is a full study, more than what you're seeing the readings there, that will have the full technology
Right.
used and the methodologies and
That's
all
not,
that, like any engineer.
That's not defined in our ordinance, by the way. So that's a problem. So those readings you have up there, the 3 locations that are near existing homes, do you know what the average noise level was between 8 and 11 a.m. based off the NM 02, 03?
I think that is the average.
Yeah, but if you
level
average
space.
those three together, what is it?
It's gonna be pretty close to 52.
Yeah, 52 decibels. But you want to raise it, and that's during the day. And you want to raise it to 60 all day long.
Correct.
But we don't even know what it is at night. So it could be, it could be possibly, it could be considerably lower than 52 at night. So you could be raising it, you could be raising the noise levels. We don't know how much you're raising it at night if you want 60 during the entire 24-hour period.
We can work with the 60. Keep in mind our neighbors can actually be at 70 if they're residential. They can be louder than we can.
So why did you not measure any noise levels at night?
We're following the recommendations of our engineers in terms of collecting appropriate samples for similar projects.
So you don't know why you only did it during the day.
Again, this is the recommendation and the scope from our engineers of how, in their professional judgment, they would run a sound study for a similar project.
Okay. So how can you say you're not adding significant noise when you don't know what the nighttime noise levels are?
We're adding not significant noise during these times. If you'd like us to do a nighttime study, that we can do additional studies as part of the next steps going forward.
People are in their house 24 hours a day, so. So you don't have any concerns that you may be significantly exceeding the 50 decibel noise limit in the IT zoning district at night?
Can you say that again?
You do
I
not have
understood.
any concerns that you're significantly exceeding the 50 decibel noise requirement that's contained in our IT zoning district regulations?
We are requesting that be raised to 60 decibels.
Yeah, that's not the question that I asked. I asked, do you have any concerns that you may be significantly exceeding 50 decibels at night?
I think if you left it at 50, we moved forward with the project, we would have to comply with the 50 decibels a night.
Okay. So you're willing to commit to 50 decibels at night?
We would request that you would keep it at 60, but
That's
if
not what I
if
asked.
that's a conversation we need to have.
Well, that's why we're here tonight, right? I mean, this is a conversation we're here to have. I mean, I have examples of multiple data centers in Virginia and Maryland that the one in Fairfax County agreed in its special use permit to not exceed 50 decibels at the residential property line. It's right there. And that's from 2023. So that's 3 years ago. So you think you could do that?
Yes.
Okay. Will you do that? Will you commit that in writing?
I think we're having a great conversation, and I think that we need to look at the package of potential amendments to our PUD to understand, and really, things like that, quite honestly, are not even up to me to accept, realistically.
Who is?
Because, you'll hear me out.
Okay.
The way we have worked, and I've done this all over the world and worked in other communities, is that at a meeting like this, you can make a motion to say, I want to approve this PUD with these 4 amendments, right? And then, if the group agrees with that and puts it forward, then we make the decision about, are these things we can live with and we can move forward with. I will tell you that I believe 50 decibels is not a deal killer.
Okay. Good. Okay. Would you be willing to use another scale besides the A-weighted scale? Would you be willing to use a admit to some kind of noise requirements using a C-weighted scale?
Yes,
Okay.
for sure.
Okay. But I guess the last question is, if you knew that the noise level requirements at night were 50 decibels, why did you propose a data center that didn't meet those requirements?
60 decibels, I believe, is actually a reasonable limit. I actually don't think that it's going to be a problem
given the size of this data center and the distance from the property line, particularly when you put in a triple row of trees and all the underbrush, it's really hard to get any sound through there at all. We were just looking to have a consistent number, because again, once the data center starts going, the data center doesn't stop and turn off, and it doesn't fluctuate day and night like some other industrial manufacturers would do.
Well, it could take several years for the vegetation to grow to the required heights, I think this is.
Exactly, which is why it will get quieter over time, quite honestly.
All right, I don't have any more questions.
I've got some.
Yep.
In the PUD, you came up with 60 decibels, obviously, but when we're talking about hertz, I didn't see any sort of guideline or ceiling on that. Why is that? There's no guideline in there for the hertz.
Because what Jonathan was mentioning, the hertz actually gets figured into the C-weighted sound limits. The way your ordinance was written was just with straight decibels with the, what they call the A-weighted. And so we were just responding to what you had requested and making, basically choosing the same units and terminology that you had used. By the way, the number with the C-weighted will go up from 50 because the C-weighted skews higher, but that's a technical conversation for another time. Make sure that we get to the appropriate noise level.
Here's one of my, for me personally, most important questions. Say things don't work out the way some of the residents want in terms of noise or vision. Would you be willing to purchase their homes above fair market value or compensate them in some way?
We have had those conversations with some of the neighbors, and we are doing that in other cases, so we will have those conversations.
I think that's important.
Comment on the noise. Rob?
Yeah.
Mind if I go ahead and ask a
Go ahead.
question? Okay. So I was going to comment that in the noise study that was done, there was nothing acknowledging like how much noise comes from a peaker plant. Obviously that would be something necessary to be done, and I think with my experience and investigation on those peaker plants, that location where the peaker plant is at wouldn't work because there's not enough baffling, muffling, so on and so forth. We would like to know if you're able to move some of that area and reorganize, your site plan, because that's really, I think, what has a lot of people concerned. There was not a lot shown with regards to the data center facility next to Richland Road and Moffett Road. Can you modify and not have that PUD extend that far? Is that a deal killer? Can you move it a quarter mile or a half mile to push things to the north and just bring more of your land that you're acquiring from the north annexed into the city?
As the PUD is written, the peaker plant would be subject to the same noise requirements as the rest of the site. So that's answer one. Putting in the peaker plant, we would have to find a way to make it work at the potentially 50 decibels at night. And so that's answer number one. Answer number two is absolutely that can be done, because another likely outcome here is this is not the last time this PUD will come before this board. Now that we have, so when we submitted the PUD, we only had the land under control that is the Tetris piece that you see today. So if we had said, hey, we want to include this piece and this piece, we got to go back to the beginning and start over. So what we would likely do is come back to this board next month, 2 months, whatever the appropriate timing is, and say, hey, we'd like to amend our PUD, same rules, regulations, but we also want to bring in this other piece of land into it, which would give more flexibility to do things exactly like you're talking about. But again, on the sound piece,
if it's within the PUD, it has to comply with the same sound as the rest of the site. And it would be incumbent upon the, what we call the IPP, the independent power producer that would develop that. They would have to meet all of the requirements. Same screening, same height requirements, all of those things. All right, thank you. Keep going. All right. Infrasound. I think we've hit sound here. Our research, our studies actually say infrasound is not an issue. There's a lot of literature out there where people have done the research, and it is not a danger at all. It started out primarily in the wind industry. Wind turbines, the older versions that flipped around and went with the wind, created some eddies and sound cycles that were problems, and so a lot of that rhetoric has now gotten attached to the data center sites. But again, we're willing to do everything on the right side there for the design features for the neighbors. Dealing with the site layout, the bigger site certainly helps. Want to push things to the middle, help with those sight lines and distances. The equipment, the acoustic barriers, the modeling, all of the verification that will go on, we'll make sure that is not an issue. Fire services. I have bought a lot of fire trucks in my days all over the world. Many of the communities that data centers have gone in have not been equipped, and this is always one that we address. Fully committed to making sure that your fire department has all the equipment they need, all of the training they need, in order to be able to service this facility as well as enhancing the services for the other residents of Piedmont.
Question.
Yes, sir. Question.
Page 157, under fire protection 7.4, it says the end user agrees to support the city's emergency response capabilities, which may include funding. That should say will include funding, and here's why. If you're gonna build something 75 foot high, we don't have a ladder truck that can reach that, nor do we have a building to keep it in.
Absolutely.
So that needs to be changed to will include.
Happy to wordsmith that. I think if it needs it, is you may have all the funding in the world and just don't need it, but we are absolutely committed to getting you the equipment, training, things you need to be able to do that. Okay. A data center will not lower your home value. There's been a couple of studies come out that are actually proving this. This one, full transparency, and what's in the appendix is data centers actually increase home value. So this is the home values around the Pryor, Oklahoma, the Google data center. You can see before that center opened up, the average home value was $104,000. That was right after the housing crisis, so that was 2011. In the last 4 years, those houses have appreciated 101%. The data there, by the way, there's not only this one, there's another slide that's got additional data that we'll flip through quickly. The research that's out there basically says the reason data centers, that homes appreciate near data centers is because once people live next to data centers, they realize that they're not awful, that they are just like large industrial facilities with very low traffic, but the amount of investment that they bring in the community, you get better schools, you get better fire, you get better water, you get better roads, and all of the businesses in the community that start to thrive from that. And many communities, depending on where you are and how those funds get allocated, start to see property taxes actually going down. And so all of those things are attractive to homeowners, particularly in a case like this, where there's going to be a data center and 7,400 residents benefiting from the revenue of it. It's just data. It's literally just data. This is just a further table sort of showing smaller communities, larger communities. Doesn't matter the company, doesn't matter the year, the before and after, and the appreciation. In Nashville, we're looking at 42% in 3 years.
Okay, I'm now gonna turn it over to Jonathan Abibi, our Chief Technical Officer, who's gonna talk to you about some of the energy solutions.
Good evening, Jonathan Abibi, President. So as Aaron mentioned, so I'm gonna talk about on the electrical side, really how we're gonna ensure that we can provide energy for this data center as well as ensure that we don't impact rates. So what the slide you're looking at is the overall energy solution, and it's really anchored off four different kind of path forward, but all of them ensuring one thing, that the existing ratepayers within the city of Piedmont are not, they won't see a rate increase, and in addition to that, we'll see liability improved from the addition of the data center to the area. So, sure. So let me speak to bottom top left. So in terms of rate increase and why this project will not impact rates. So as folks may be familiar with, earlier this year, there was a bill introduced and approved in May, House Bill 2992. For those not familiar, that's the Data Center Ratepayer Protection Act of 2026. And so with that law being in place, requires utilities for new loads above 75 megawatts to ensure that they have their own separate rate and that they pay their own way for any infrastructure that's required to facilitate their interconnection. So our project was already committed to that, and further with our work with Similar Electric Co-op, which will be serving this, we're committed to adhering to that law. As part of that, so bottom left, talking about the actual infrastructure, so again, to actually physically connect and provide services to the data center, there'll be new infrastructure that'll be required. They get identified through various studies, both with Similar Electric and other utilities, and we've made a commitment to fully fund the costs associated with interconnecting our facility to the grid. Now, there's been discussion about, well, how long are these commitments for? And so, at a minimum, our contracts are for 15 years. And so, as you know, what that does is it ensures that we're making commitments that the utility won't be left stranded with any upgrade costs that we identify. So we'll be paying our way in, like I said, minimum of 15 years. One additional thing that's unique about our approach here is, as you know, when new data centers come, it's a new load to the grid. So what we try to do is also be solution partner with the utilities and introduce new generation to help meet that load. And the generation that we introduce, what's important is not dedicated for the data center. So maybe folks are familiar with the term behind the meter. So this wouldn't be behind the meter generation. This would be in front of the meter generation. And what that does is it's ensure it's infrastructure that the whole transmission grid can utilize. And so what I'll do is I'll get into a little more detail on some of the generation that we're dealing with. But I want to point out there's, as the block in the top right indicates, we have both, wind, thermal, solar, and storage generation facilities that we're bringing to the table to help facilitate this new load. So if there's no question here, I'll move on to the next slide.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. If I read correctly, the lifespan of this whole project, I believe I read was 25 years. Why are we cutting this off, the guarantees off of 15?
So first of all, as the slide also indicated, the 15 years is minimum in the initial commitment. So the ongoing projects, they renew. So there's nothing that limits.
So we can take it to 25 if we want.
That's right. These are minimum. These would be negotiation with the utility.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding your term. When you say term in front of the meter, you mean subject to franchise taxes and all political fees, correct?
Correct. And there's a slide on that. Yeah.
I don't want to say what Mr. Heisey always says here because he says it quite well. You would want to put that in your agreement, I presume, right?
Absolutely.
That wasn't mocking. It's really a fair line. I've learned some things from lawyers, right? That's right.
Okay, so this slide is really focusing on the generation that's going to be located within the area where the data center will be located. So there's additional generation that we're going to be bringing to the table, and then I'm going to get onto that on the future slides. So we mentioned there's natural gas and battery energy storage generation that's being proposed on the site. So both of them have their own benefit. You know, as you know, these natural gas would be peaking units, so basically being able to quickly respond to demand on the grid for electricity. And then we also have battery solutions that basically help smooth out the consumption of the data center. And again, these are front-of-the-meter solutions that can be utilized by the grid to basically ensure reliability moving forward. And having both, we have the option on our interconnection request with the independent system operator in the area, SPP. It's a hybrid connection for both natural gas and batteries, so we have the ability to, if required, to make it all natural gas or to make it all battery, and so depending on what the best technical solution is for the grid. So if there's no questions, I'll move on to the next slide. So we just wanted to give here an example of what that would look like, right? So what you see here on the left is an existing power plant, which is called the Spring Creek Power Plant, approximately 6 miles east from here. So that's a natural gas facility similar to the one we'd be proposing. So it's a peaking unit, as you can see on the bottom left. The setback associated with that facility is only 250 feet. There's no berms, there's no landscaping. On the right is a rendering of what it would look like for our site, implementing the minimum 350-foot setbacks and the berms and the landscaping requirements. So to give people a visual of what this might look like on the road. So, and the other thing to stress is, on the right, you see the stack. We're being conservative. That's the worst case, the highest stack that may be required. So there's other solutions looking at, which is going to be lower than that, but here we're showing the worst possible scenario in terms of the visual impact.
Question?
Yes, sir.
So on that rendering, where's your point of view that you're looking from and to in that example? Because Matheson is off of Waterloo Road.
That's right. This is
The southwest corner off Richmond, looking to the east.
southwest corner of Richmond, looking to the east. The
Okay.
folks looking at that.
And that facility is only, you're only showing one stack?
That's
I
right.
believe there was two shown in the site plan example.
No, so this is, this is if we did, so actually what we're showing on the right is if we did, we had tried to identify what's the worst case scenario in terms of the highest stack we would need. That's going full natural gas, no battery, and having one facility do that. And so that's what you're seeing the worst case. If we break it down to more units, it'll be lower than the height shown there.
Hey, Jonathan, sorry. You're saying that that's the worst case. When you say units, is there more than one turbine in a unit? What does that mean?
That's right. So it depends on the size. So the overall interconnection would be 300 megawatts of utility. So yeah, depending on the individual size, so you'd want, maybe for redundancy purposes, you may want smaller units. So and this is driven and guided by the air permit requirements.
How many units does the Spring Creek plant have?
As you can see from the diagram, it appears to have 4.
And it's 340 megawatts?
Correct.
It says, and you're wanting to build a how many megawatt gas plant?
300 megawatts.
And you'd only need one unit?
So again, this is showing the worst case. If we have more units, we won't need to stack that high.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to show the worst case is
Right.
that we want to add up.
So if you had 3 units, how high would the stack be? How much shorter would it be than that?
I don't have the exact number. We try to identify the worst case. It's going to be lower than this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. But we don't know how, 5 feet, 20 feet?
Maybe I can answer.
Well, we still haven't decided on the technology. So that uses a 100-foot stack, but it could be, most of the turbines that we looked at have only 75-foot stacks. So again, we're still evaluating different technologies out there, different number of turbines. Those turbines are 75 or 80 megawatts each. So we end up with 50 megawatt turbines, so we would have 6 units potentially. So again, something that we're still evaluating.
Okay. The geothermal thing, that's just a pie in the sky thing, right? That's not, I don't see how that's feasible to produce energy, right? I'm not talking about cooling, I'm talking about energy.
There's a lot of advancements, but it's
Yeah.
unlikely
Yeah.
that it's a thermal resource. Yeah.
I have a lot more questions about this power plant, and is now the appropriate time to ask those, or? Okay.
Sure.
So who's gonna own and operate this plant?
Likely to be transferred to, an experienced, owner-operator of projects.
Would it be like a, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it could be a utility or someone like, OG&E, Energy, NextEra,
Okay.
companies like that.
Would it be like a merchant plant too, possibly, for sell to anybody who needs power?
Well, it'll wanna be contracted
Yeah.
to sell the power to the data center when needed, and then additional power will be sold to the grid, as Jonathan was saying.
But if it's owned by OG&E, I don't know if I really consider it. I'm not an expert in this thing, but it seems like merchant doesn't apply if it's OG&E.
Well, yeah, if it was OG&E, it'd be utility-based,
Right.
rate-based, so
Right.
it's likely independent, that would be selling to the data center plus whoever else needs the power.
So it's not connected directly to the data center, is it?
No, it's connected to the grid.
So it's connected to the grid. So then it doesn't, it's not, you're not doing behind the meter and all this kind of stuff?
No.
Okay. So, and you say that it's gonna meet the noise requirements of the IT district? Okay.
Yes.
So it's gonna operate independently from the data center. It's really not, you're building this, but it's not really part of the data center, it's a separate thing.
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
typically on the hottest days of the year, coldest days of the year, when power is needed, it will operate.
Okay. So you don't consider the plant to be auxiliary to the data center? It's its own separate thing?
I believe that's right.
Okay. So when I wanna ask about specific language in the PUD about the uses and things, should I ask you guys, or is there someone else I should talk to about the language in the PUD concerning okay, Aaron's saying yes, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm just looking at my questions here, making sure I've got all the sort of quasi-technical things. Okay, that's all I know about for you guys.
And again, to summarize, yeah, so, go ahead, Mike.
The purpose of this is to not have backup generators sitting around the location, correct? Like, this is going instead of backup generation.
No, that's not the case. So again, as I mentioned earlier, so this is, we're trying to be solution partners to the utility instead of, so typically, a large load customer will go to utility and say, I want X megawatts, and the utility will be responsible for going out and procuring that generation to serve that load. So we're trying to bring solutions to the utility to help serve that load. Now, each data center, if there's an outage, for example, from the grid, they want to have their own ability to keep going. So there will be backup generation for the data center, but that's not an asset resource. That's not a transmission asset resource, if that makes sense.
It's for emergency.
Yeah. Only whenever the grid is not available, right? If there's an outage where, there's a blackout, the data center will have their own generation at their own, within their facility that meet the noise requirements. And so just to serve that, but again, that's only for they have very high reliability standards. You can imagine some of the use of data center that we saw earlier. So they're critical infrastructure, so they need to be up and running.
Gotcha, thank you.
So, move on to the next slide. No further questions. Okay, so here, what we want to point out is, so there's, the megawatts that will be required for the data center, not all of it is going to be at the site. So again, there's really two buckets to think of the generation that we're proposing bringing to the grid. Right? So bucket one is existing generation that either operational or expected to be operational within the timeline of when this data center will be operating. So these are assets which are developed by independent power producers, right? Not us. And so we go out to market, see what's available. We put ourselves in a position to procure that and offer that as part of meeting the capacity requirements to interconnect this load. So that's what you see in the bucket on the left. That's approximately 594 megawatts. And just please remember that number as we go to the next slide, because some of the, estimates that we make in terms of the economic benefits to the community are based off that number, because we're trying to be conservative and not add the additional megawatts that we're bringing. So now moving on to the second bucket. So the Mathewson that I mentioned, number 300 megawatts, that's within that 900. We have 2 other sites that we're developing that are nearby, connecting to the grid to be able to deliver to this site. Right? Again, those will be transmission assets to help support and basically ensure reliability to the grid. So we provide services directly to the grid, not to the data center. So that sums up to 900 megawatts, which comes up with the total that you see on the right, just approximately just under 1,500 megawatts.
Jonathan, I'm sorry. So maybe just so everybody understands, make sure I understand correctly. The 594 megawatts is basically power that's available to you guys right now that you could access. Is that
Yeah, the right now being, some of them are already in development and they're gonna be in service in the next year or 2.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're not developing those, we're
Right,
being developed
right.
different part of the state.
Oh, a different part of the state.
Yes,
They're not local
No, sir.
generation. Okay. So then the 900 megawatts, you would be helping to develop those. I mean, what kind of generation facilities would those be?
They would be identical to what I just showed you for the Mathewson, they'd just be in different locations.
And you said it'd be nearby. That's what that says.
That's right, yeah, so, that's right, they're within kind of what, again, nearby, electrically speaking, within 2 substations or
Okay.
buses, that's right.
So you wouldn't be planning on building like a giant solar field, like just to the north of your data center?
No, and it's public information, like our other traditions.
So these are other people, or these are sites you've kind of seen and working on developing right now. So are they like solar, wind,
No, they're
gas?
similar gas and battery, just like what I mentioned earlier, they're exactly identical. And again, the purpose of that is, again, we're trying to help facilitate the interconnection of the data center. That's why we're developing this, with the generation. So again, instead of just leaving it all in the utility to try to solve this problem.
This may be a stupid question, but, that's a lot of power.
Yes, sir.
How do you ensure you're not going to crash the grid?
That's a great question, and and here I'll talk about, and it's mentioned here on the top of the slide, there's already organizations and institutions that are responsible for the very thing you mentioned, right? So we sit within the transmission system that's operated, independent system operator, what's called the Southwest Power Pool, made up of multiple states. I believe it's about 13 across in the middle part of the US. And all the requests go through them. They do the assessment and they ensure that there isn't any adverse reliability impact from these interconnections. So what they'll do is there's a multi-step study process. They'll review your request along with other requests being submitted in their study queue, and they'll identify what are the required upgrades to allow you to interconnect, and then you need to agree to those and fund those to interconnect. So there's going to be facilities identified that we'll need to fund in order to ensure that we can connect this generation safely and reliably.
But there are studies out there that will ensure that this is not going to crash the grid. Have those been conducted
That's right.
for this substation and like this?
So we're in the study process, and these are public information through the SPP website. We're going to, we got phase 1 study results, phase 2 study results are expected end of November, early December timeframe. So yeah, then after that, you do a facility, what's called a facility study, where they basically, they provide more details on the upgrades identified based on how long it'll take them to complete those upgrades, their estimate, and how the specific costs, they basically narrow down on the cost and schedule. And then you need to get into what's called an LGI, a large generator interconnection agreement, where we make a commitment to fund those upgrades and interconnect with the grid.
And those studies are on the 600, 594, or the 1.49?
Great question. Those studies, right, SPP studies everything. So we initiate what you see in the project 2 bucket. Those 900, we submit those requests to the SPP and we initiate those study processes. So in essence, we're in control of those requests. And what you see under bucket 1 are other independent developers of what's called IPPs, independent power producers. And they've gone, so that's why those are more advanced. So that's why we're confident in pointing to those first. And for some of the economic analyses you see on the subsequent slides, we point to those, so those are, like I said, either they've already been completed, they're either operational, or they're about to be operational because they're further advanced in the study process.
Gotcha, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more question about the 900 megawatts. Is that gonna require any new transmission construction to get that power there, or is that gonna be using existing transmission?
It's a great question. So when we submit this request, the first thing we do ourselves, we try to identify where, not just us, any developer of generation tries to find points on the grid that won't trigger significant upgrades, that won't require new transmission lines. So you try to see where the existing grid is already strong enough that you can easily interconnect, because not only the cost component of paying for the additional upgrades, but there's also time, because it might take 3, 4, 5 years for this. So you know, we try to be very strategic and find locations, just like the Matheson substation being adjacent to it, because it's a strong point on the grid, other points strong on the grid. So we don't anticipate significant upgrades, but again, the SPP process will let us know what specifically is required.
Well, wasn't there a proposed transmission line that's OG to connect to the Matheson substation right now?
Yeah, so those projects, those are from previous projects, right? They're not triggered by us, because we're still in the study process.
Yes.
So they're gonna let us know, hopefully by the end of this year or by next year, if there's no delays, we'll get clear visibility on what specific upgrades are request triggered.
But that could assist you guys in being able to transmit more electricity to the Matheson substation from these new generation facilities.
That's right, yeah. Generally speaking, any new transmission infrastructure that's on the grid, it helps
Okay.
with, reduce the overall impedance of the grid, yeah. No further questions, I'll move on to one more slide. I appreciate the patience. So again, just anchoring off that 594 megawatt number. Okay, so there was I think a question earlier, I think, from the city attorney about franchise fees. So our understanding and in discussion with Sonoma Electric, so in lieu of a franchise fee, what there is in Oklahoma is for projects served by Sonoma Electric, is we pay 2% city gross receipt tax. And in addition to that, we pay 2% state gross receipt tax. So I'll just focus on the city one first, because that city tax goes directly to the city of Piedmont. And again, going back to that 594 megawatt project number that I mentioned, because using existing projects that we know we can get that generation. 2% of that based on electricity anchored off that 594 megawatts is estimated to be about $9 million per year. And so again, this is the floor. As we add more of the generation that you saw, if we add some of that 900 megawatts, the electricity consumed by the data center goes up, which means the city gross receipt tax goes up as well.
Is that a linear thing? So like, since you're talking about roughly 3 times, that 9 million becomes 27?
Correct, sir.
Roughly.
That's right. That's right.
Making sure.
Because it's a percentage of the total electricity consumption.
Okay.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead.
So can you confirm that 2% gross receipts tax applies to this project?
As far as, this is probably better, we've had discussions with Sonoma Electric, and that's our understanding. In lieu of a franchise fee, this will apply to us, but.
But we don't know for sure. We don't have anything from Cimarron that says, yes, this will apply.
So, I reviewed the legislation, because that was the question, that's what I was getting at, was the legislature has been known to try to circumvent the process previously, there's been a case in the Supreme Court about that. So I checked it, it looked like it was all still applicable to you, but if the council decides to move forward with that, I would just recommend to you all to put it in our agreement that says, the legislature changed anything, you guys still have costs and that you need to maintain to make sure we have another funding mechanism.
Okay, so the revenue estimate that you're giving there, it's based off of the electricity usage, and it's based off of a rate that you'll be paying, assuming, can you even confirm that Cimarron Electric's gonna be supplying electricity? Can you even say that publicly?
We have a request with them, we're working
Okay.
on, and so, and then going back to, again, the recent law that I mentioned, 292,
Right.
they're required to have a separate rate for a new, for loads above 75 megawatts, so not just for, they're developing it as part of their adherence.
But you don't have like an actual finalized agreement yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
So what rate did you use to calculate that revenue number?
I can follow up after, I don't have that off the top of my head, but we can follow up with that number, sir.
Well, it looks to me like it works out to about 9.6 cents a kilowatt hour,
That sounds approximately correct.
which is, I mean, considerably higher than normal industrial rates would be.
Our anticipation, maybe, you know, for larger loads, and sort of the new tariff being developed for new loads above 700 megawatts, so
But we don't know what that rate is gonna be actually yet.
not at this time.
When will we know what that rate is so we can actually confirm the numbers that you're showing on the slide?
This is, okay, this is a, it's part of the tariff that Sherman Electric is developing, so it's within their process, so, yeah, we're gonna inevitably be a customer there, they'll let us know.
We understand that, I mean, right now that's just an estimate, and
Right.
and you're telling us we're gonna get 9 million, but we don't really know if that's correct. Because depending on what that rate for some reason goes down, below 9.6, it's gonna be less than that. So we can't independently verify that number at this time.
Yes, you're correct, sir. And the one thing I will say is, like I mentioned earlier, we're anchoring off a low number estimate, 594. We're not anchoring off the 1.5 or the 1.494. So
Right.
that's why, so, you know, because we're using a low number, so even if, you know, we're gonna have more megawatts than that, so even if the rates happen to be lower, you know, it's, again, this is just an approximation to give folks an indication. Are we talking about 5% of your previous budget? Are we talking about, 10%? And as you can see on the slide, it's approximately 60% or 58% of what the previous 24-25 budget.
Yeah, but, you know, I mean, the end user is gonna make billions of dollars off this thing, and you guys are telling us $9 million, I mean, that's peanuts. That's nothing. I mean, first off, if we're gonna agree to this, there's gonna have to be a floor that you say, we're gonna give you this much every year no matter what. All right? And then that may increase 2 or 3% every year. And we're gonna, if you're signing a 15-year deal, we're gonna want a 15-year deal, 15 guaranteed 15 years of minimum non-revenue too. You understand that, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so my understanding, again, as Aaron described the process, that's part of the development agreement, so there'd be plenty of time to discuss that. It's just, again, like you said, like we mentioned, we don't have the rate from Sierra Electric. Once we do, you have full numbers, exactly how much will we get.
But you want us to give all of, you want us to agree to all that the end user terms now, and then you want us to negotiate our terms with the end user later. Because you want the development agreement to come after this. Right? These aren't parallel tracks. This is
My
one.
understanding is,
So, as you saw in this sort of 6-box slide, this is definitely a step in the process, and not everything is finalized, because as we work on these projects, there's a lot of complexity, right? We've got Southwest Power Pool and, SPP and all kinds of people doing things, got the utility doing things, we've got you doing things, we got engineers. So we have to continue to advance the project, and unless it all comes together, the project never happens. And so some of the things that you have concerns about floors on payments and things, we can absolutely do that. I confirmed with our economic development consultant, Brent, who'll be up here in a minute, that you are able to negotiate with us what's called a pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Takes out all the variability.
I'm not talking about
and
that.
sets a floor for your revenue to guarantee what your revenue is.
I'm not talking about pilot.
Okay.
I'm talking about, you're gonna pay us a certain amount of money every year, no matter how much electricity you use. That's a minimum, that's a floor, and then if you use more than that, you pay up to that. And also, why 2%? Why not 3%? Why not 4%? Why do we have to go to 2%?
I believe that 2% is a statute, Brent. So that's what the deal that you've already negotiated already says.
Oh, I think that's a state law, if I understand.
Then it's a state law,
But hey,
that's the answer.
We're making a deal here, so it's, no, we're not talking zoning. All this stuff is about revenue and everything else. They opened the door, so we're talking about it.
well, what is the
And while I'm okay with discussing this with them at this point, we need to focus on zoning and not try to get into the technical details that are negotiated in the development agreement.
I'm not giving up any leverage.
City Attorney, would you clear this up?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that question first. There's been questions questions as we go through this process, we're making sure we get the minutes right. I keep saying this, everyone understands about passion and emotions. When you scream out and yell, we can't have the recording, we can't hear it, make sure we get the minutes just right. So I just encourage you, please respect the process and try to get those minutes right the first time. Question was, the gross production tax, I believe, in regards to gas, statutory process, that's what the agreement is at present. I am not aware of any statutory provisions that would prevent you from, through your development agreement, following a lot of this out. I think, Councilman, you've indicated, there's a lot of costs that you guys will be having in roads and maintenance and fire, and I think that's a fair conversation to be had.
Yes.
Councilman Myers, I think trying to figure out when we're gonna have that conversation. And so I think it's just good to get it on the table right now, and we'll figure out how we move forward as we go through the process tonight. But it's good to get the ideas on the table for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
the 2% probably really is something that we gotta talk to Simmer on.
You're not gonna change the 2%, because the 2% is the agreement until the time is up on the agreement. I think the nuance of it is, through the development agreement, you would build in some costs to the developer, because you're then taking on additional costs, which I'm quite confident from knowing all of you very well, you don't wanna put up on them, and so we would have to have that conversation.
And-
When I say them, I mean the public.
And just to clarify that agreement that you're talking about that's already in place is with the electric
The
company.
gross production tax is with the electric company.
Yes.
Our development agreement would be through our process that we're putting together.
well, if you're not negotiating it right now, you're gonna get screwed, okay? Me too.
All right. Okay, so this is just some of the economic impact from earlier we talked about a minimum of a $1 billion investment. In addition to the $9 million, that is a $1 billion capital investment would yield $13 million in tax revenue per year, which is more than $400 million over 30 years without any increases. That property currently generates around $5,700 a year in property taxes. The ancillary benefits, we're looking at economic growth, workforce development, because the data center developer will come in and train your people to work in the data center, infrastructure enhancements that will come along with that, and then really increased revenue without a whole lot of demand on a lot of your infrastructure. So things like schools don't need to be increased like a lot. Many economic development initiatives, when you start bringing in too many jobs, starts to create other problems that the data center doesn't really. And then on the right side, I won't drain this, but again, this is just showing just a breakdown of the overall property tax revenue. Again, short-term construction jobs, 1,000 or more, and then the long-term jobs for a facility like this, we're projecting 300 plus.
I have a question about the property tax part. Now, you're saying this is predicated on $1 billion. But
Yes.
you said earlier that another project similar in size to this was worth like $13 billion?
A $13 billion total investment there.
So prior, theirs is on the books for $1 billion, and they're nowhere near this size, are they?
They don't actually, so we typically talk about data centers. You've not heard me talk about square footage. You only hear me talk about megawatts. That's just the way
Right.
the industry talks. That facility over there, they actually won't disclose how many megawatts
Okay.
that it's serving, but it is significantly smaller than this.
Because my, back in the envelope calculations were that $10 billion investment, schools would get like $400 million a year. Their current spend is $65 million.
Yeah, so one thing I would caution you about with numbers, if you hear a number, ask what it means, just like the megawatts of IT versus utility megawatts.
Sure.
So a $13 billion investment from Meta, that includes a lot of personal property.
Okay.
So the specialized equipment on the inside, things like PDUs, mechanical equipment, things like that, typically don't hit the tax rolls as real property. just like the fixtures in a store, right, don't hit the tax bill, it's just the real estate, right?
Okay.
So somewhere between 1 billion and 13 billion is probably more realistic.
Yeah, that's a big range.
Well, that's why those numbers typically get put into pilots during the development agreement. That's not a jab, that's just the truth of how it works. You'll look at that facility, figure out what the cost is gonna be, and then rather than arguing over taxes, come to an agreement that gets put into the development agreement and into a pilot so that you have long-term predictable revenue, you never have to worry about it, you never have to argue about it.
Well, you realize that the city has no control over property taxes. We don't receive any property taxes. We don't set property taxes. Those entities you have listed up there, the schools, the VOTEC, the county, those are the people we have to negotiate that with. We can't negotiate on their behalf, I don't think.
Correct. That's all part, there's a lot of moving details.
That's the part though that, there's this tax increment finance district thing, and as far as, negotiating a pilot with some revenue sharing with us and all that kind of stuff, I don't know if that's more complex or less complex, and that's just implementing a tax increment finance district and, siphoning off a little bit of the profit. But we're dealing with all the pain to potentially bring about, and the school district isn't.
Well, that, Brian, you made a good point. You talked a lot about infrastructure enhancements, but you've never explained how those are gonna be paid for. How are those gonna be paid for?
The data center would pay for them directly.
You're not,
We
nobody's
wouldn't-
gonna get proposed a tip
We would
on
not,
this?
we would not, propose a tip.
Yeah,
The industry has, moved away from that. One of the speakers earlier talked about, in Port Washington.
Yeah, you ran into some serious problems there, didn't you? After the fact.
I wouldn't say there was significant problems with the public, but the project, is advancing. The mayor and council are very happy with the project. But I think the direct reference to this conversation was, there was a $185 million, they call them TID in Wisconsin, tax increment district, that got put in place. The subsequent projects that are going in, do not utilize, TIDs anymore. The data center industry has evolved to just paying their own way. So that $185 million that was required in Port Washington, that project we're starting today, that would just be paid directly by the developer.
Okay. You also on this slide, you show short-term construction jobs over 1,000. And you mentioned there wouldn't be any impacts to schools and things. All these people that are working, there's 1,000 people on site. You're not gonna be able to pull 1,000 people out of Oklahoma City. There's gonna be people coming in from all over. Those people are gonna have kids, they're gonna be living in trailers, they're gonna be living long-term hotels, things like that. That will have a direct impact on this community because we don't have a lot of rental property here. We don't have any hotels. We don't have any trailer parks. We have some, but we don't have a lot. Where are all these people gonna reside?
So that's one of the first things that the company will do is come in and make sure that, the market can handle that. Oklahoma City is a similar sized city to Milwaukee, where Port Washington is, similar distance outside of town. They are seeing increases in property values, they are seeing rents go up, they're needing more people to work in the restaurants, work in the bars, work in the cafes. So they are seeing that economic boom, but housing has not been a significant, concern there. I'm happy to connect you with some people in Port Washington and understand, their real and lived experience, if that would be helpful.
Well, I mean, I don't know anything about, they're suburb of Milwaukee, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Again, geographically, in terms of number
yeah,
of
I
people.
understand what you're saying.
I feel
I
like
understand
it's
the
similar.
urban area and all that kind of, I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. 300 long-term jobs, your PUD language says 50 to 100. Your slide from last month said 50 plus. Why the sudden jump?
Historically, the data center industry has wanted to under-promise and over-deliver. As a for instance, Meta said forever. So when I was at Meta, every data center project that we announced said they were making an $800 million investment. It was significantly more. They then upped that to $1 billion of investment, and it was still significantly more. And now they're talking about a $13 billion investment. So as we are seeing more concerns from citizens and jobs and costs and things, the overall industry is just being more transparent about the economic benefits, particularly the construction dollars and the jobs and things. So we just upped that because we feel it's more in line at full build out with the reality of the world. So the 300 Meta announced, again, long term, the 1.5 gigawatt that Jonathan showed, that's similar. So we picked it to align with that. Also, there's a study that's come out recently from the University of Southern California. Their graduate school did a study on jobs in data centers, and their numbers say that there's roughly 1 job for every 3 megawatts. So if we get to a gigawatt, that's around 300. So that's how we got to that number, and ultimately elected to bump that number up because we feel it's more honest and more reflective of what the employment will be there.
Yeah, I guess going back to the increased revenue without demand, I mean, I do see a strain on city services when you have 1,000 people converging on the site. Traffic, crime, housing.
Traffic, yes.
If somebody builds a bunch of shantytown mobile home parks or trailer parks, you will see crime. And I don't know how much you've ever worked in the construction industry, but not everybody that works construction is a upstanding citizen, okay?
Understood.
There's a reason why they drive crew cab pickups, because only one guy has a driver's license and the other guy's got DUIs. Okay?
So to a certain extent, you have some control over that, right? This body's not going to allow a bunch of shanty towns to pop up all over the place.
Well, but
Unless
we
they do
only
it.
have control inside our limits, right?
Exactly, that's fair. And then other things, again, I was just up in Port Washington last Tuesday and drove the job site, and there was traffic, but they had state troopers that are being paid for by the data center site. It's right at an interstate exit, and they just had a line of cars, and they were directing it like you do a football game that's letting out, and letting 20, 30, 40 cars go to keep the traffic flowing and keep that from going into town. We'll also work with the construction company to make sure that the haul routes are right and that we're not hauling things past the school at 7 o'clock on the first day of school and things like that. All of that gets done in these large projects.
Where is that written down in an agreement with the city?
Development agreement.
Why not a special use permit?
If you wanted a special use permit, that could probably be negotiated as part of the development agreement.
I mean,
You have to submit a monthly traffic plan and all those things.
I mean, that's what the ordinance says. I mean, you understand the special use permit stays under the control of the council, right?
Yes.
And you're proposing a development agreement that's not going to be under the direct control of the council.
But as part of the development agreement, you could have special use permits for various aspects.
Or we can just do a special use permit like the ordinance says.
If that's the way you would want to do it, we're talking about specific things like traffic control and whatnot.
I'm talking about all kinds of stuff done with construction, all kinds of stuff done with noise studies and monitoring and all types of things. Those are things that are appropriate for a special use permit.
Okay.
Council, I have up my notes just for your, just look, I was gonna suggest that to you all, for that very reason where you have ongoing supervision.
Yes.
Build it as a specific use permit instead of a special use permit. We can talk about the new one
Yeah.
at some point. That'd be better protection of the city.
Again, the project is here to work with you to make sure that all of those things are being done appropriately.
Well,
I'll say this too. I don't think legally you can eliminate the special use permit out of the PUD, out of the zoning ordinance language. There's nothing in the PUD language that says you can eliminate things like that. And if there is, I'd like someone to show me where it says that you can eliminate a special use requirement.
We certainly don't want to do anything that's illegal.
Of course.
Obviously.
But I'm saying, I think you understand what I'm saying, right? I want someone to show me where it says in our zoning ordinance that a PUD can eliminate a special use permit requirement for a specific district. Because the way that I read the ordinance, it just says a PUD is a combination of uses found in the zoning ordinance. It doesn't say anything about eliminating things in the zoning districts.
Okay, Corinne?
Yeah, there you go. I guess the real question is, from a legal standpoint, from the city side, if this is a concern, we can address it, but you're technically in a PUD, you're setting the regulations, you're asking for deviations, which is the whole reason of a planned unit development.
Well, again, but show me in the zoning, the Piedmont City zoning code where it says a PUD can do that. That's all I'm asking.
I think we're open to the discussion of showing you, figuring it out, internally, externally, seeing where the right message.
Aside from a legal debate on it, I just suggest you not have to worry about it, just put a specific use permit in there, because you do get the ongoing oversight.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're gonna argue from hearing you on that, I just think you need to put in there.
There's other things too, like you created uses in the IT zoning district that don't exist, and where does a PUD say, I can create a new use inside of a zoning district?
I think that goes under the planned unit development, that's the whole point of the planned unit
Yeah,
development.
so show me where it says in the language of the zoning ordinance, where it says you can do that.
And I think we can go probably to, I think we can just have it to list it as a special use. I think that's where we'll lean towards.
But again, that use isn't in the IT zoning district,
What use are you referencing, Council?
the power plant.
Sure.
Yeah. See, there's like folklore surrounding PUD, it's like, we can do whatever we want to. But when you actually dig into the ordinance that authorizes PUDs, I can't find that language in there that says we can do whatever we want to. And I want somebody to show me where it says that, because I think we've just contributed long-term to this idea, and we just keep repeating it. Where does it say that? And that's what I want to see. I want someone to show me where it says it.
So would you like to just pause this meeting right now so we can go find the codes, or can we kind of move on with this and we can come back to that?
We can move on, but I'm just making a statement. Yeah. I didn't mean for us to stop.
Okay. Community benefits, just beyond the tax revenue and the jobs. Danielle Decatur, who was here last month, I believe. She's our VP of communications and community outreach. She will be spending time in the community, understanding what those community needs are. We don't like to just start putting benefits in place without understanding what that is. We will work with the Piedmont Community Fund and Grant Committee via the Communities Foundation of Oklahoma. And we will be delivering community-determined net benefits that enhance well-being and support essential services. All that to say, we upfront will be making once the project moves forward and receives approval, we will be making a $1 million upfront investment into the community. And then we will be making an additional $9 million, so a total of $10 million across various project milestones, development agreement, building permits, construction start, things of that nature. And again, it really will be up to y'all and up to the community. We just issued our first grants in Alabama last week. That went to first responders. They had some really urgent needs at a volunteer fire department. And then to a weatherization utility assistance program. A lot of homes there have damaged roofs and things, so giving them money to pay electric bills doesn't really help when it's just going right out the roof. So we made our first donations there. Again, would be looking to do something similar here based on what the needs of this specific community are. So, with that.
Aaron, sorry, I have one
Yes, sir.
question. I'm not familiar with any of the two organizations listed under bullet point 2. Could you kind of explain who those are?
Not the specifics, because Danielle was supposed to be here. I was not prepared for that. But you have me on camera, and I will write down that we will donate the first $1 million.
Well,
and it will be, again, if we're working with you, it will be in the city of Piedmont with with a good community partner to distribute those funds.
I've never heard of the Piedmont Community Fund and Grant Committee, so I'm just.
You got me on that one.
Okay.
I got caught there. I will 100% take that one. I'm gonna turn it over to Brett Kiss. I think the back.
All right. I can speak to the Piedmont Community Foundation, which I think it has been around for a very long time, like for decades, but has not been active for at least 10 or 15 years. And so part of the discussion was to reactivate that, I believe. I've talked to some of the folks. Mayor Mayab, council members, city staff, the fact that you're seeing me means that we're nearing the end of our presentation, and we can move on to other things. I respect you for your service and your patience and your transparency through this whole process. A little bit of background on me, since I've not had the opportunity to meet all of you.
Mike's out.
All right. Can you hear me now? All right, a little background about myself. I grew up in Burlington, Oklahoma. A farm kid from up there. We raised wheat and cattle, with a tractor every day. Had the opportunity to lead an agency in Oklahoma called USDA Rural Development back in the early 2000s. Did local economic development in Enid for about 10 years. And then from 2019 to 2023 served as the director of the Department of Commerce here in Oklahoma. Since then, I've had the opportunity to work on projects all across the state, things that I'm passionate about. And technology jobs is something that I've been passionate about for a long time. And it was something that was a high priority for us whenever I was at the Department of Commerce. My role in this presentation today is to show you, step back just a little bit and show you that you're part of a larger process that's been going on in our state for some time. And I will tell you, I've had the opportunity to attend a lot of city council meetings, and dying communities have very boring city council meetings, so you guys are definitely not a dying community. I will be talking about why we pursued them in Oklahoma. Why have we even looked at technology jobs here within the state? The first reason was keeping our data here in America. We are in an arms race right now with China as it comes to the development of the data center industry, with AI growing as well. The fact that they're going to be built somewhere is a big deal for the United States of America, and it's become a big deal for Oklahoma. So keeping our data in America was one of the reasons why we had a whole team of folks at the Department of Commerce that were attending every conference, meeting the CEOs and trying to encourage more of this industry to move to our state. Second one is data centers have made a positive impact in Oklahoma for a long time. I had the opportunity to actually serve on the Mid-America Industrial Park for 5 years. I got to tour the Google data center over there, as well as the Global X digital facility, which is the second largest data center in Oklahoma, right behind the outlet malls there on I-40. I've seen the STEM labs that they've installed in the schools there around Pryor. Every school district in the county has those STEM labs. And I've gotten to see the way the schools have grown. I've gotten to see the way that the communities are growing. And I'm a rural guy. I mean, my hometown was 120 people. I live in Enid today. And I've always been passionate about rural economic development. And I could see that data centers were going to have a positive impact. Another reason why we were looking at it is we have excess electric generation in our state. We produce 68% more electricity than we use here. We don't have the congestion in the grid that some of the other states have. And so that was another reason why we were looking at it and why the industry was looking at us. And then I got to see the significant financial resources for rural schools and communities. I believe that we had some questions earlier about ad valorem taxes and the fact that those go to schools. You save a community by saving the school. And I believe we need to save more of our schools in Oklahoma by adding more ad valorem taxes to those schools. You're the fourth fastest growing population city in Oklahoma right now. You are 40, I pulled the numbers just yesterday. You're 48th in population at 9,800 people. You're 86th in taxable sales. We're trying to fund the schools and trying to fund the community on the backs of homes and residences, and that gets very expensive for those residences. The thing I love about these technology jobs is that they do provide financial resources for communities, and the fact that you were asking some of the questions that you were just a minute ago warms my heart to hear you thinking that direction. Is very important as leaders of the community for long-term sustainability. In closing, I'll say this: it's easy in government. I've worked in government forever. It's easy to say no because then things tend to go away. But it's hard to say yes and maintain ownership of the definition of yes. That's our goal. Is okay. Yeah, I used to say whenever I did economic development, people come to me and say, "Oh, I need $1 million in incentives." Great, I would love to give you. Yes, I'll give you $1 million. You gotta hire 2,000 people and you gotta invest $1 billion. But yeah, I'll give you $1 million. We have to define what yes is. And I've been through the videos, I've been watching, I've been sitting here listening to all of the comments, and these are great comments, exactly the questions that we need to be asking. Questions about water. If we don't want them to use too much water, put it in the contract that they can't use too much water. If we have concerns about sound, let's put it in the contract, that there be limits on sound. If there's concerns about electric rates, make sure that our state legislation that is passed is going to protect our ratepayers. I believe it does. A lot of times we have to ask about incentives. We don't have to ask that in this situation. They're not asking for any incentives. In fact, they're trying to find ways to invest in community benefits. But the big question is on the upside, and we've had some debate here about the $9 million in sales tax on the sale of electricity. That is a number that came from Cimarron Electric Co-op, not from us, and so it would be based on any estimates that they have made. I believe that is a baseline of what you could expect coming out of a project like this. The $13 million in property taxes, I believe that is a baseline as well. We have met with the schools and talked through this process. If there is going to be a bond issue in the future, wouldn't it be nice if you had a huge project in town that was going to pay a large portion of that up front? But in closing, I would say that most of the upside is a lot more personal than it is the financial side of it. The reason I got involved in economic development was because I have 2 kids, and I now have a 4-month-old grandchild that lives about 20 miles from where we're standing right now. And the fact that our state has provided opportunities for them to stay close to home, so I don't have to go to Chicago or Atlanta to spoil grandkids, is awesome. And so I commend you for your work. If you've got any questions for me, mine's more not a hard-hitting presentation here, but any questions for me before I go sit down? All right. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to Aaron.
All right, last slide, just a couple points I think that Brent made. We're seeing this across the country. Data centers actually help rural communities stay rural. Huge percentage of your tax revenue coming from a very small portion of your land bank. Provides stable, multi-decade economic anchor that supports thoughtful planning and working with you on the various needs of the community. Allows communities to be very selective about your future development and other projects that may come in and whether or not you want to allow those in. And again, other than a highly landscaped area, it preserves the rural character. Reduces pressure for piecemeal development by strengthening your local tax space, and again, maintains very low visual impact through the large setbacks, landscaping, and the campus style layout that we have proposed. So, with that, I'm happy to take any additional questions you may have.
I have quite a few. Says we do a sound study every 2 years. I know that's in our IT district. But do we be possible to have some continuous monitoring, at least maybe during construction?
Yes, that can all be worked out.
Okay. And during construction, are we talking about, keeping the noise level down to 60 decibels?
60 decibels during construction would be unachievable. There will be noise during construction, but in conjunction with working with that longer term monitoring, something could be worked out.
Yeah, maybe some limits.
Certainly.
Higher limits maybe, but as far as continuous noise.
Yes, and then also during, we would set limitations on work hours as well.
Yeah, okay. One thing, with our rough roads, there are times when I thought we were having a little earthquake, but it didn't turn out to be that. It was a truck hitting potholes.
Yes.
So as far as vibration goes, any significant vibration from operating data centers?
None. And back to your, the previous part, we will also improve the roads before construction starts, because the construction team doesn't want to drive on the roads and hit potholes and make it sound like there's an earthquake. So there would be work before construction starts to improve the roads as, I hate to use the word temporary, but construction roads suitable for construction, and then at the end of construction, rebuild in a manner suitable for long-term use.
Okay, so when you say construction roads, though, I'm talking about the sort of dusty gravel that we have right now?
It would likely be an upgrade to that, likely to an asphalt road that could potentially go to a concrete road long-term. Again, we would do the traffic study, work with the construction company, figure out where the routes are, the quality of the roads, make the improvements, and when they're done, then improve the roads for long-term passenger vehicles once there's no longer construction.
You listed Cimarron, Frisco, and Richland. Are you talking about all the way to Waterloo?
We would have to figure out where the construction entrance is. We wouldn't want to put in, nice new roads and then say, well, we're going to run route construction somewhere else.
Yeah.
So we would have to work out the details of that. And we would work with your city staff, your public works director and whatnot on that.
Okay. All right, light. We talked about using cutoff fixtures. We're talking about dark sky type lighting.
Yes, there's actually a set of regulations that I believe is in the zoning. Yep. So there's a set of regulations out there that's the most strict lighting regulations. It's a group called darksky.org that regulates exactly that, how many foot candles can come off the property, the type of fixtures you have to use, fully enclosed, no up, no down, no sideways or up lighting. It even goes so far as to regulate the temperature of the bulbs that need to be used to reduce the light sky and the impact of migratory birds and things. We are 100% on board with signing up for the darksky.org. Again, it's standards that are already in your ordinance.
And what about though during construction?
During construction, there would be more lights, but again, construction sites are getting much better about the amount of light coming off them, not putting just single bulbs, shooting things everywhere. So a admittedly lower standard during construction, but still could put standards in place to regulate that.
And what kind of precautionary measures are taken should there be a leak of glycol solution in your facility?
That would be addressed immediately. The people who run data centers, a lot of them are ex-military, particularly people from submarines. True story, I asked the gentleman that ran operations at Meta why there's so many ex-submarine people running data centers. He said because in data centers, we want people to follow
the protocols. If something goes wrong, we know about it immediately, and we just go down the checklist until the problem is 100% solved. He said if you don't do that on a submarine, people die. So that building, all of the data centers have thousands of monitors and sensors. Anything goes wrong and it's addressed absolutely immediately.
Well, one thing that occurs to me, I've asked some about this with city staff. How, we have tornadoes here, and all too frequently. I live in a house that's rebuilt after it. How well do your structures stand up?
Well, they're built, the physical structure is much like a logistics warehouse, right, in terms of sort of post and beam, typically concrete panel on the outside. But they are more reinforced due to the value of the servers that are inside.
And, okay, but should one of these get hit by a powerful tornado, there's likely to be some environmental issues, right? Y'all got insurance
Yes.
powerful enough to fix all that?
Yes, and again, most of these companies are self-insured, the big ones, the Microsofts and the Metas. They absolutely will deal with that. And again, there's no dangerous chemicals. The worst there is some propylene glycol.
Okay, and with when it comes to potential fire and all, and I'm sure you have fire suppression systems and all, but you're also talking about batteries in there, What I know is these lithium batteries have a tendency to catch fire, and they're really hard to put out. I don't know what kind of measures you have to take to guard against something like that. I'm
Do
assuming
you
they're
want to
pretty-
know?
Well, maybe just give me the high point.
Okay, the high point is throughout the data center, there's a thing installed called a VESDA, a very early smoke detection alarm that detects and alerts within the facility to the people in the FOC, Facility Operations Center, watching the thousands of sensors, and they have a procedure for starting to deal with anything. The joke in the industry is if you sneeze too close to a VESDA, it'll go off. So extremely, extremely sensitive. The data centers over the servers, there is a 2-level pre-action dry pipe sprinkler system. First, when you get the first alarm, the air discharges from the pipe. Second alarm goes and water actually fills in the pipe. And then third, if you actually get a fused link, which is the little red things you see. So sprinklers don't work like you see in the movies. One goes off and they all go off. It doesn't work like that. The fusible link has to get to 165 degrees, the mercury inside melts, then the water comes out. So you've actually got 3 levels of protection before you actually get water to a sprinkler, and I believe the fire department is typically notified and alerted after the VESDA and the pre-action goes, so that you don't get false alarms and people coming out just because the VESDA went off.
Okay. Coming back to the environment for a second, just quickly. Emissions are just mainly from the diesel generators that are run occasionally to test, right?
Yep, and to be clear, the diesel generators only back up about 10% of the facility. Historically, data centers have done what you call 100% backup, so that the grid goes down, everything keeps running. These facilities have gotten so large that they're past what the EPA calls the PSD, the Prevention of Significant Deterioration, which means you just can't physically install that many generators because it would create too much pollution if they all started. So what the facilities, just like the chips evolving in their design, what the facilities have done is they've evolved the design of the facility to only back up the network, which is typically 5 to 8% of the facility. So you have a minimal amount of generators on a site like this that only go off when the power cuts. The generators cut on until the power comes on. What happens is the servers have enough battery ride through and backup, and the cooling system does gracefully cool those servers. But if you lose your network, your data center can be down for 2 months trying to reconfigure it. So that's why putting the diesel backup on the generators is important. And they only run during emergencies, and then they will run once a month for typically 40 to 45 minutes at a scheduled time during the day, just as typically a monthly test. And again, it's scheduled. It's like, I'm from Nebraska, we had tornado sirens once a month, 10 o'clock Saturday mornings. It's kind of like that. They kick on for an hour, they run, they get their emissions tested to make sure that there's no pollution there, and then they shut down.
Just making sure I have to ask the questions I wanted to go.
These are great questions.
Well, I did have one more about the natural gas plant. There was some study coming out of Harvard about particulate emissions coming out of natural gas, and it was aimed specifically at a data center with a bunch of natural gas generation in Virginia somewhere, fairly high dense population, and came up with some estimates about how many extra deaths from the particulates and all this stuff. But this is, the thing about this natural gas plant is I don't really know what y'all are proposing. You can't even say how often it will run.
Correct. It will run as a peaker plant. So as Brent pointed out, your state actually has a whole lot of extra generation, right? And totally separate point, but interesting. Data centers are actually good for existing ratepayers because a lot of days when the wind isn't blowing, you as ratepayers have paid for those wind turbines that are sitting out there. And if they're not generating, they're not making money, right? So the data center buying a gigawatt of power consistently from the grid is really good for ratepayers because that pushes up the revenue of the existing utilities. So what our plant does, these plants will do, is on those days when it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, July 15th, 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock, you're still at work, your work air conditioner's going, your home air conditioner kicks on, and everybody's double running their electricity. That's the peaks, and the same thing in the winter. So that's when those will kick on. So it's really load dependent, weather dependent, but it's not a 24/7, 365 type facility.
Well, the one comment I had on that study out of Harvard was based on particulates. And, I'm pretty sure if the EPA put a particulate monitor next to any of our dirt roads, we'd be a non-attainment area. So to the extent that they get paid, I don't know, I think the trade-off might be positive actually.
Absolutely. Agreed.
All right, that's all I got.
We're just gonna go down the list, started out with Ward 5, Jonathan, and go to Ward 4. Do you have any more questions?
Yes, sir. All right, these are a mix of all kinds of things, but in the IT zoning ordinance, it says no approval shall be granted unless the city finds that existing or planned infrastructure can support the development without adverse impact to existing users. It doesn't say no approval for building permits, no approval for platting, it just says no approval. So where are the required peer-reviewed comprehensive utility and infrastructure studies?
Those are all in process. As Jonathan said, we're working with the Cimarron Electric. We're very open to working with your staff to figure out exactly what the needs are going to be so that we can make sure that those specific things that are required can be done.
So how can we approve anything until they have those?
Yes.
Daniel?
We can, Kelly probably knows the page number. Did you put a specific line item in there waiving that? Or are you on with the baseline? I don't have to memorize. I can look real quick. Do you remember? Kelly, you remember? Grab one check while we talk. Council, once you go to the next question,
Okay.
I'll back to you.
So going on with that about utility impacts. So you meant, I should have asked this earlier. So you said 75,000 gallons a day domestic purposes. Typical office water usage, 20, 35 gallons a day per person.
Agreed.
You said 300 people, so call it 10,000 gallons a day. What's the other 65,000 gallons a day?
Well, initially it's for the fill. That's the primary reason for that. But there is also potential technologies that could utilize some of that water as part of the gas production.
Yeah, that's my next question.
To reduce emissions and do other things based on the technology.
Yeah, you can inject water into the turbines to reduce emissions. Is that kind of
Yes.
layman's terms?
So that's a potential use, and again, as we get into the details and figure out the exact technology, that's an opportunity.
All right, and so in section 9.17 of the PUD, you say you're using a closed loop system, but state the city could provide water system to the project for cooling or other operational purposes. Why do you need, you said you need that for the initial fill, but why do you need that if you continuously say we're using a closed loop system? Why would you need a connection for cooling besides the initial fill?
We can take that out.
Okay. All right. Get that, Daniel?
Which one?
Take out about the connection to the municipal water system for
Essentially-
cooling.
Yeah, essentially that we won't evaporate water for
Okay.
cooling.
So you understand Piedmont buys most of its water from Oklahoma City, right?
I've been told that, yes.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of important to this. And there are restrictions on how that water can be used. So we're talking about all this landscaping, and you mentioned xeriscaping, and I don't know, a comment about planting a tree in Oklahoma. To support all those trees, it's going to take quite a bit of water. You're gonna die if they're not watered. Personal experience, everyone in this room knows that. I mean, with weather we've had the last several weeks, they'll never make it if they're not watered. But, so my concern is you say 75,000 gallons and you come back, not you, the end user, who's ever operating it, says, we don't have enough water to water all these trees. We need double, we need triple. Then we say no. I mean, so what, it looks to me like, and the staff's asking us to cap this, how are we supposed to know how much water is needed if no one's done any studies to figure out what's needed for all the other purposes, uses?
So one, there's ways to deal with that. One, we can continue to talk about, is 3 rows of coniferous trees the right screening solution for the site, or is there something else we should do, which we can, again, figure out as the project advances. There's other things, like there's days when you don't need the water. We can also utilize on-site water storage, so that we would be drawing the water from the system, storing it on site, and then only using it when it's needed. So that when you do get a stretch of a week, assuming we keep the trees and we need it for the landscaping, you would contain the water on site and then draw the water and utilize it. Maybe it gets pulled in at more than 75,000, but it would be withdrawn from the system, stored on site,
Sure,
and utilized on site.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
there's ways around these things.
But until the calculations are made of how much water is needed for irrigation purposes, we're just kind of guessing at this point. You see what I'm saying? Like, you're asking us, I don't want somebody coming back saying, oh, we need double the amount of water, and you guys are long gone because QTS or Vantage or whoever else is running this thing, saying that. So, you see the problem here? You understand my concern?
I understand your concern, but again, these are enormous, complex projects that involve lots of agencies, lots of end users, lots of details that have to be worked through. And so we have to continue down the path, taking one step at a time. As they say, you eat an elephant a bite at a time, right? And so getting through the planning and zoning then clears us to continue to advance the project, to continue to work with you, work with your staff, our consultants, the end users, to come up with a project and the details that ultimately will be put into place.
But that's not what our zoning ordinance says. Our zoning ordinance says no approval shall be granted until you do those studies.
water studies that you're mentioning, right? The specific language in the PUD says that this PUD controls if there's a conflict. Problem with the way it's set up right now, we've talked about this with staff. I'm not seeing, Kelly, I'm looking at you if I'm missing anything. I don't see a specific study conflict provision. Would you agree, Kelly?
I agree.
Okay. So in the absence of that, then we would still apply.
Yeah.
And we would need to go through that process. Now, your kind of my advice to you would be, take it or not, it's your choice. You got a lot of staff time in this, and if you move this forward and you want us to, work with the staff and get all of the studies put together, you can do that. I think you should let staff know what you guys want us to do.
Well,
So that's your motion.
let me just say this, staff missed that. They missed it. And I told you guys, I had this conversation a month ago, and I was told the studies would be provided by August. That's what I was told, and they're not here because they were never done. And so, what I was told was not correct.
I'm gonna push back on you a little bit. Staff doesn't make the studies. So if we were told that they're gonna have by a certain day,
Staff told me.
I understand that, but they don't make the studies, right? That's what I'm saying to you. If they weren't turned in, they weren't turned in. And you're right, we're here, and I'm answering the question that you have absolutely.
And I'm telling you, staff missed it. And that's not the only thing they missed, but now, one more thing on this water deal. Going back to we're buying all this water from Oklahoma City. They entered into a settlement with the Choctaw Nation, Chickasaw Nation, several years ago, because they buy a tremendous amount of water from Lake Sardis and from Lake Etoka. And back in April, when all this stuff started coming out in the news, they put out a statement, and one of the Oklahoma City Utilities Department put out a statement that says, large volumes of potable water used for non-potable purposes contradicts our water conservation plan and water settlement agreement, and as such would not be appropriate use of our limited water resources. So, one more reason that the studies need to be done is so we know what we're bound to and what we're not bound to, and are we gonna get in trouble with our primary water supplier? And these are serious things, and I'll say it again, staff missed it, and staff was aware of it, and they didn't do their due diligence, and so here we are. So, I just want you to understand that, and, that's a real problem. Now, you understand, you talk about expansion, and you talked about maybe building outside city limits.
By the way, back to the water, we are aware that that is a concern.
Yeah.
And again, we're not gonna do anything to get you in trouble. There is opportunities to truck in the water from off-site for the initial fill.
Yeah.
In which case, then we're not doing anything in
Sure.
violation of what you just read.
Okay. Now, you're talking about, you're saying, well, if you don't approve, we're gonna go outside city limits. I could see something that somehow this gets approved, you do both, you build outside and inside city limits. You can't use any water from Piedmont outside city limits because we have a moratorium on using city water outside city limits. So I don't know where, I just want you to be aware of it. You understand that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's see here, sorry, going through my list of things, let me check them off as I go. Back to the screening. You talked about a 6-foot berm instead of a 12-foot berm. I ran some back the number calculations here for berms. You said 4